The young man turned his gaze to Ophelia, firmly declaring that much had changed, and now it was time to pay for past misdeeds. Ophelia only looked down on him coldly, while the other youth confidently claimed that it was she who poisoned Sitara and tried to harm Sir Yutu. At the same time, she did not pretend to respect the emperor's last will, ignoring it completely, and the young man insisted that everything was clear even then. He said that Ophelia Dainredani would be subjected to the harshest punishment as required by the law of the empire, and no excuses would help. Then the young man asked what the sinner would say before the end, and she, with cold determination, declared that she intended to destroy this world to the very ruins. The man ordered the girl to be put into eternal sleep, and she realized that the fate of the world, which had shown her no mercy, was of no interest to her at all. After some time, Ophelia opened her eyes in her own bed, breathing heavily, and slowly realized that she had survived against all odds. She felt the pain from the arrows that had pierced her body, but even afterward, it remained sharp. At that moment, one of the maids timidly turned to Milady, noticing her coughing, and mentioned the tea she had brought. The main character barely blinked before throwing a pillow at her, and the maid immediately apologized, not expecting such a reaction. She added that she did not know that Milady did not want to see anyone, and promised to leave immediately, trying not to anger her hostess. Ophelia understood that she had returned to the past and was alive again, because this was the 4th time she had to wake up from eternal sleep. The girl wondered how many more times she would have to experience such events, realizing that her life had become cyclical, and she herself was a transmigrant. In the adult novel, the Crown Prince's return made her the final test, a role that fell to Ophelia as the final boss. According to the plot, the villainess imprisoned Prince Eudes in a tower and plunged his mother into eternal sleep, thereby strengthening her own power. The protagonist was able to overcome all difficulties, defeat his half-sister Ophelia, and take the throne, fulfilling the destiny of the empire. According to the laws of history, the villain should have been plunged into eternal sleep in the most terrible way. But the young lady knew that she could change the course of events and replay everything. In her first life, Ophelia dreamed of a world where beauty reigned and treated her half-brother, who languished in a tower, with kindness. After the transfer of the throne, she spent the rest of her life married to Kirsten Erhard, fulfilling her obligations and finding peace. He was the new owner of the magic tower and had an extraordinary appearance, attracting the attention of everyone around him. However, the girl did not expect that this seemingly weak man was capable of cruel and unexpected actions that violated all her ideas. The young man claimed that when the time came for Ophelia to become empress, everything would already be prepared for her ascension and trials. The main character tried to understand what the guy was talking about, because she had already handed over the throne to Eudes, and this topic no longer concerned her. Her life seemed righteous and beautiful, and she did not understand why events suddenly changed so drastically, turning everything upside down. After some time, the young lady was executed. She believed that this was the end, but at the moment when she breathed her last, a rebirth occurred. The girl tried to comprehend what had happened and wondered how it was possible that she had not been forced to completely fall into eternal sleep after the guillotine. She looked closely at her face and realized that she looked the same as she had 10 years ago, thinking that this was a transition into the past. Ophelia knew her goal was to create a happy ending, and she wondered why her life had been destroyed the way it had been. She didn't even expect betrayal from a minor character. The maid approached her, asking about her cough, which came as an unpleasant surprise. The girl guessed that she had returned to the past because the plot required adjustments, otherwise the tragic ending would repeat itself over and over again. The maid again noted that she had brought tea, and Ophelia, turning over the tray, understood that in order to stop the cycle of reincarnation, she would have to follow the original plan of history. She turned the tray over to the maid, aware that any deviation from the script could lead to a repeat of the tragedy, and that was exactly what had to be done. The main character asked if she should drink this tea, and the maid, asking for forgiveness, quickly ran away, leaving Ophelia to reflect on the inevitability of reincarnation. Despite her cruelty, the girl understood that even a fifth life is not enough to change the repeating cycles of events, and everything repeats itself again. No matter how much she suffered, at the end of each life, Eudice would invariably hold her battered body, continuing to play her role in the fate of the world. Now the young lady reflects that if she is destined to be reborn, she will strive to leave this life peacefully, without pain and suffering. She feels like she has had enough of the trials and pain that pierce her body, as if she finds herself in constant torment. She dreams of calmly letting go of her last breath, although Eudice once called her greedy, not understanding her thoughts. At this point, the young lady realizes that tears are useless, and it is time to focus on what really needs to be accomplished. Before she goes into eternal sleep, she intends to hand over the throne to Eudice, so that she can then calmly let go of her life. The girl understands that her departure will be quiet and peaceful, exactly how she wants to see the end of her journey. She has nothing more to fear, but thoughts about how to organize everything still haunt her. The memory of the young man saying he would use all his influence to make her departure painful again troubles her. The young lady feels a tremor in her body, but comes to the conclusion that this is not destined to come true, because she is about to be reborn. She wants to return to the times when Satara was alive and served in the family, originally from a small northern village. At that time, she was the prince's mother and the emperor's chosen woman. After Ophelia put Satara into eternal sleep, the protagonist became a transmigrant. She dreams of going back in time to change the course of events, or even start over, like in coming-of-age novels. Then the prince's mother would be alive, but she's sure he would hate her. Now the main character sighs quietly, and the maids, seeing this, become frightened, falling to the floor in surprise. They ask if Her Highness's dinner was not to her taste, asking for mercy. But the girl only thinks about what is happening to them. She wonders why her one breath can cause such fear, and wonders if asking for a peaceful exit is a luxury. For someone who lives the life of a villain, it is still necessary to find a way to arrange everything the way she sees fit. A little later, someone approaches Milady, asking where she is going, and waits for an answer. The girl ignores the maid and moves on, but she tries to address the princess again. She inquires about how long the child has been in detention and receives only a brief answer about the length of the confinement. Emmy announces that today is exactly 1 year, and the main character confirms that this is indeed true. She realizes that Ophelia kept the boy there for a whole year, and comes to understand that the plan was carefully thought out. The only way to ensure a peaceful passage into eternal sleep is to force Yuta to act according to her terms. Allowing herself to leave peacefully, she realizes that the guy, like the main character, cannot be immersed in eternal sleep. It's his privilege, because if she could end his life, she wouldn't have to think through every step so carefully. The young lady understands that Eudice is locked in a luxurious prison, but even in such conditions he never got sick and remained healthy. In other words, if he cannot be put into eternal sleep, it is better for him to suffer than to go away without a fight. But the girl doubts whether this will give her a peaceful end to her life. Then she comes to the conclusion that she has had enough of hesitation. She must act. At that moment, she hears whispers about the princess acting strangely and about possible blood in the palace. The young lady thinks that the life of a villain is always full of unexpected moments when someone comes to the boy. The boy is the emperor's only son and Ophelia's half-brother, and he remains at the center of events. The maid turns to him, and the boy, looking thoughtfully out the window, shows that nothing terrible is happening. He also dreams of how great it would be to go out and walk on a sunny day, enjoying the moment. The woman wonders how the boy can remain so gentle, and suddenly exclaims, turning to him. She reminds him who locked him there, so that he will never forget that his mother was plunged into eternal sleep by Ophelia's will. The boy advises Shayna to be careful that no one hears, and asks her not to speak badly about the princess. The main character stands at the door and thinks about how inopportune she came. She then turns to the maids, ordering them to remain where they are and not to make her repeat her requests. Shayna asks Eudice to remain patient until he is alive, and the emperor comes to his aid. The main character enters the room, wondering if the old man is really capable of saving the boy. She realizes that it won't be easy for him because he is weak and no longer young, but she reminds him that this is all Princess Ophelia's fault. The girl then greets the boy, but the maid immediately stands in front of him, preventing the meeting. She asks why the princess came here if she promised not to touch Sir Eudes. The main character wonders what the maid is afraid of, or maybe she herself is looking for a reason to be immersed in eternal sleep. She understands that she shouldn't have said that, because she lived Ophelia's life for a long time and is used to speaking like a villain. The young man asks the maid to pray for the princess's forgiveness, warning that if anything happens to her, the consequences will be severe. The main character understands that in her first life, Eudes loved her very much. But after becoming emperor, he sentenced her to death, and that love could have been an illusion. Now she considers it a trifle, is sure that everything will be forgotten, and turns to the boy with this understanding. She wonders if he wants to get out of captivity, while the maids lean against the door, trying to eavesdrop on the conversation. One of the maids then timidly asks what the princess had just said, and whether she had really suggested that the young man leave this place. The young man, hearing this, only looks at Ophelia in confusion, after which he slowly turns his attention to Her Majesty. He wonders if she's come to take his life. Ophelia sees his surprise and asks why he thinks that. The young man explains that he knows the princess would not have let him go without a reason, and if he does decide to let you go, he will send you to a dangerous place, like a battlefield, which is almost tantamount to execution. Ophelia understands that, despite the fear that grips the young man, the desire to survive is alive within him. At this time, the maid turns to the princess, crying out that Sir Eudes must be released, and asks why this is so, and why they should trust her. But Ophelia only smiles softly, which slightly frightens the young man. She then turns to Eudes. The princess asks if he truly hopes the emperor will save him. She rises and claims it seems the news hasn't reached him. The emperor, their great father, has become weak in mind, and sooner or later will no longer be capable of anything. If he is ready to take his own life, he will soon unite with Sitara, and now only Ophelia can save the young man. The boy, shocked, asks if the emperor really did this. One of the maids remarks that it is strange how the princess asks if Sir Eudes wants to go out, since she was not sure whether she should come. The maid fears that the young man is now being frightened even more, and wonders what the princess is planning. Ophelia, pointing at the young man's forehead, declares that she has said enough, and now he himself must understand the situation he finds himself in. The young man only looks sternly at the princess, and she realizes he understood everything. She sees in his face the determination and strength, as well as the hatred left behind after he was betrayed, and she understands that this is the face of a man deceived by fate. After many reincarnations, she pondered for a long time what exactly had destroyed her first life. It wasn't only her husband's fault, but her own as well. One day, she invited Sitara to her room. The princess stated that the woman understood that the emperor had no feelings for her. The brunette begged Ophelia for mercy, but she only replied that it was up to her to decide. She had to eliminate everyone who stood in her way. The woman promised to live quietly, not to claim anything if they left her alive, and asked to spare Eudes. Ophelia put down the knife and turned to Sitara, reminding her that she had to answer for her words. After some time, someone cried out that something bad had happened. Lady Sitara poisoned herself and fell into eternal sleep, while Ophelia remained in her room. The maids looked after her, and she thought about the sad ending. In his first life, the girl told the boy that they should be friends, but he took it as a joke. Now she quickly opens the door, and the maids hurry away. Ophelia doubts the young man will believe her, even if she swears not to touch him. The choice remains his, to gather courage and go out or remain in fear. The princess asks what kind of life he would prefer, then turns to the maids and says that it is time to leave. One of the maids thinks about the poor boy, who was so frightened that he might spend his whole life in the shadows. Ophelia feels movement and turns around. It is the same young man. He holds onto her dress and declares that he wants to go out and live outside. He doesn't know what the princess is planning, but he doesn't want to remain in captivity. The young lady understands that his actions reflect the protagonist's character. He overcame his own fear, and although the maids screamed, warning of possible danger, the young man firmly decided that being locked here did not mean being safe. The danger no longer bothered him because he was ready to do anything for the sake of freedom, and tears themselves flowed from his eyes, silently rolling down his cheeks. When he noticed this, he immediately carefully wiped them away, and the main character realized that now the boy felt less tense, although tears still glistened on his face. She noted his keen intelligence and high self-esteem, but looking at him, it was impossible not to see the small, scruffy kitten he looked like at that moment. Eudice, hearing this, turned around sharply and looked at the girl in surprise, not believing his ears. And she secretly decided that such a relationship was quite suitable for them. The maid watched in amazement while the main character asked Emmy to bathe the dirty boy and restore him to human form. The young man, however, only inquired curiously as to why he was being called dirty. Meanwhile, one man got ready and left the room. The butler respectfully inquired if the gentleman was really leaving. He bowed and asked to be careful, and after a while the maid was already washing the boy. One of them said that she would add hot water to make the bathing more comfortable. Another maid suggested adding lavender essence, and then they decided to add lemon tincture with herbs for aroma. The perfumes alternated, as there were 42 bottles on the shelves. They also handed the young man an outfit, assuring him that it was quite simple and comfortable. The boy wondered in surprise whether it was really a simple outfit, and the maid explained that she had chosen it taking into account the master's wishes. At this time, another maid brought clothes and handed them to the young man, trying to make sure everything was neat and comfortable. When he saw the maids handing him new clothes, he was surprised and asked if this was too much. Then he took a comb and began to carefully comb his hair, and the maid watched him with admiration. She noted that Sir Yude seemed to be shining with cleanliness, and the young man thought that now he was neat enough and the girl would no longer call him dirty. After some time, they went out into the garden, and the guy was amazed by the beauty of the surrounding world, because before he had not even imagined that such places existed. While the princess was busy with her own affairs, he was able to calmly enjoy the moment and prepare for the upcoming events. He turned to Shayna to look at the beauty of the greenhouse, enjoying every detail of the plant. But the woman only reminded him that Princess Ophelia was dangerous, and he must not let his guard down for a moment. At this time, the main character suggested that the boy go to breakfast, trying to distract him and give him some peace. The maid accidentally spilled some tea on her mistress's dress, immediately apologizing for her awkwardness. Ophelia just waved it off, saying it was nothing to worry about, and the boy realized that Shayna was partly right. It was stupid to be afraid of everything, but you also needed to relax with caution. He couldn't know exactly when the princess would change her mind, and the protagonist sighed quietly, realizing that there was still a lot of uncertainty ahead. She realized that now that the stubborn man was free, it was worth taking a little break before moving on. The boy sat down opposite her, and the girl noticed how awkward he felt, not understanding the rules of table manners. She ate opposite Eudice, mentally hoping that she wouldn't get infected with something, but she understood that she couldn't tell him about it directly. The girl decided that if the situation did not change, they would have breakfast together, gradually getting used to each other. She noted that the young man would be taught everything a future prince needed to know, and the boy was shocked to learn that he had so much to learn. The maid asked, in surprise, whether the girl had really called him a prince, and whether this foreshadowed a revolution in their usual life. The main character explained that he would have to study history, economics, humanities, mathematics, and etiquette to prepare for his future role. The young lady also decided that he would have to study imperialism later, but he had not yet gotten around to it. Ophelia added that fencing would also be part of his studies, and the boy was truly shocked. He began to understand that the girl was going to plunge him into serious trials that felt almost like an eternal sleep. However, he noticed the young lady smiling, noting that he now looked worthy of an aristocrat, and suggested that they begin breakfast. The boy was puzzled as to what this girl was planning, since he didn't yet know how to use the devices properly. His attempts to eat ended with a loud thud, but the main character reassured him that he shouldn't blame himself for something he hadn't yet learned, and the young man realized that it was because of her patience. Ophelia explained that he would live in the Rose Palace, where Sitara had previously lived, and that he would be looked after by maids. The girl asked how many assistants he would need, and the boy replied that Shayna would be enough. The main character noted that it would be difficult for one maid to cope with such a large palace. Then another maid approached the young lady, apologized, and informed her of Lord Erhard's presence. The boy tried to eat properly, thinking about how to use utensils without making noise and trying to concentrate. Suddenly, there was a loud knock, which frightened him, and he looked at the main character in fear. She looked so bad that she even dropped the cutlery, and Ophelia told the maid to ask him to move away so as not to disturb her, to which he agreed. The boy was in shock, not understanding what had happened, and the main character realized the seriousness of the situation. It turned out that Kristen Kalman Erhard was the man who married her in a past life, and the girl was surprised why he appeared now. Although he was a minor character, she felt like they were perfect for each other, but the betrayal of the past made her cautious. Now in this life she decided to avoid him, not allowing past events to repeat themselves. The young man suddenly intervened, offering to hand her the utensils she had dropped, as he had not yet used them. After that, he returned to his seat, carefully raising his gaze to the main character, preparing to continue his breakfast. She wondered why he'd done it, considering the girl had turned so pale in surprise. Meanwhile, the young man, smiling, insisted he could even eat with his hands without any discomfort. But he soon realized he'd said something inappropriate and immediately admitted it was inappropriate. At that moment, Ophelia felt confused, hearing only Kristen's name. At this time, someone turned to Her Highness, and the princess herself continued to reflect on her past husband, immersed in her memories. The brunette standing nearby asked who Lord Erhard was, whom the maid had mentioned, and the main character wondered why the lord had come to her. Meanwhile, the maid informed Kristen that the lady was slightly ill and would not be able to see him. The man asked if this was true and said he would then leave. Still, he wondered if he had done something wrong that the princess did not want to see him, trying to understand the reasons for her refusal. The boy at that moment told the main character that he did not want to eavesdrop, but her pallor was too noticeable for him to ignore. She looked so surprised that the young man began to doubt himself and wondered if he had caused the girl any pain with his behavior. The main character assured him that he was not bad at all, but on the contrary, a great man and a magician with extraordinary abilities. The boy asked if the man was really a magician, and the girl confirmed that yes, he was. She added that he was an extraordinary person, and after the disappearance of the previous owner of the magic tower, the lord was appointed as the new owner. The girl tried to understand whether he had ever committed treason out of a thirst for power, but even thinking about it, she remained in doubt. She noted that magicians care little about wealth, because they have everything they need, but Christina does not value this, but something completely different. His true strength lay in his unlimited magical power, and in an era where witchcraft was disappearing, only one person possessed such power. That force was Lord Kristen Kalman Erhard, and the young lady knew she needed to remain calm and not worry. She asked the boy if he wanted more, while simultaneously deciding to pretend there was no problem, so as not to reveal her feelings. Eudes replied that he had enough, and the princess began to worry that he might remember that Kristen had come here. After all, if the magician did something unusual, youth might mistakenly think that she was also involved in it, which made the situation extremely dangerous. The girl realized that she couldn't let him remember this incident to avoid trouble in the future. The boy wondered why such a great magician had come to her, and the princess felt a slight thrill of excitement from the unexpected circumstances. She also thought that the young man did not mean that she was not worthy enough. He simply read about magicians in books on the history of the empire and admired them. The princess wondered what history books about young men he meant, and immediately realized that it was meant to remain a secret. The maid closed her eyes, and the main character realized that she had never allowed the boy to read books in prison, and that Shayna must have brought them. The boy realized that he had broken the princess's order, and began to be tormented by doubts, wondering what he should do now to correct the situation. He almost cried, realizing that because of him, Shayna was in danger, and now she was facing a terrible fate, perhaps eternal sleep. After this, the main character rose from her seat and decided that it was time to visit the emperor to fulfill her duty. She thought that she would go herself and leave the young man to look around the palace, which slightly surprised Eudes and made him wary. The boy also rose from his chair, expressing regret about what had happened, but the princess clarified that it was because he had disobeyed an order. The boy was shocked, thinking that she would not leave it like that, but Ophelia just smiled and turned around, as if teasing him. The young man could not understand why she was doing this, because the girl turned out to be completely different from what he remembered and expected. He also wondered how he'd managed to escape punishment, as he'd been certain he was about to fall into eternal sleep. Eudice turned to Shayna and promised to be more careful, and the maid noted with relief that everything had worked out. The main character walked towards the Emperor, taking a deep breath and realizing that for the moment she remained safe. Despite all the worries, the girl felt that every word made her feel stressed, as if she was on the edge, and she understood that if everything continued like this, the tension could push her to the limit. The girl still hoped that Kristen's visit would remain forgotten, and she was pleased that the conversation had been changed to another topic. At that moment, the maid approached Her Highness and held something out right in front of her. The main character turned around and, looking at the outstretched hand, immediately realized that it was a small teddy bear. Suddenly, the bear became gigantic, and the young lady was surprised to think that there was clearly some kind of spell on it, because it had grown to her height. She asked with interest who had sent the gift, and the maid replied that it was Lord Kristen Kalman, since His Majesty was currently ill. She was also told that he would come again soon and really wanted to see her, and the girl could not believe that he was really going to come again. The maid asked what Her Highness was ordering, but she only shook her head. She stated that his visits would lead to nothing, and no matter how many times he came, she would not meet with him. A little later, the young lady headed to the bathroom, thinking about what was happening and realizing that there was no particular meaning to these events. After all, hard times await her, and this young man only makes the situation worse, and when she becomes Empress, she will change her attitude towards luxury and unnecessary spending. The girl could not believe that she had to change outfits before every meeting with the Emperor, which clearly irritated her. Soon, His Majesty was informed that Princess Ophelia had arrived, and the door of the room swung open. She immediately realized that in front of her was the Emperor himself, living in the inner palace of the sun. The young lady always hated spending time with him, so she decided to quickly put down the documents and leave. She thought that perhaps he was asleep and went to the chest of drawers to carefully arrange the papers there, but the man said that he could hear her every step, and the girl realized that she had never been able to sneak in unnoticed. She presented the documents to the Emperor, and he pulled back the screen, watching her closely. He noticed her cruelty, reminding her that he was an emperor and the father of Ophelia and Utes, named Canes-Dine Radanius. The girl realized that the conversation had begun with reproaches, and again she was worried that she had done something wrong, while the man coughed and demanded that she close the door. She knew Eudice's story had to be told correctly. The man claimed to be ill, but he saw who was causing the commotion. He had wished for the throne to go to Eudice, not to her, and the young lady realized she had known this for a long time. The Emperor had fallen into eternal sleep after the new year, leaving his legacy to his son. His attitude towards her remained the same until the very end, and he asked how she could be so heartless and cruel. The girl wondered if he was asking this seriously, reminding him that she had grown up watching her mother and father sick. The man declared that she was a bad girl, and the young lady realized that now he could pour water on her again, just like the previous times, when the girl's heart was pierced by an arrow, and when she sank into eternal sleep from the heat, nothing changed. Even when she was burned, the Emperor's relationship remained the same, despite the fact that she brought Eudice and Kristen. If she was doused with water, she could quickly escape, but then the main character noticed something strange around her. When she opened her eyes, she saw a glass of water flying, but managed to dodge it in time. The man merely asked if she thought he was funny and then began coughing again. The girl realized she had dodged in time. The Emperor asked if she really intended to put her only brother into eternal sleep. The young lady claimed that she alone was being blamed, although he himself had turned away from Sitara, originally a servant, and if he had had a son from a noble lady, he would not have pitied Eudice so much. The girl poured water into a glass, wishing the Emperor the fortitude and strength he was originally destined to possess. She also told him not to worry about Yuda. After all, it was she herself who would plunge into eternal sleep because of him. But His Majesty only grinned and called it stupidity. The girl claimed that she was coping with his duties, so there was no need to worry, everyone was waiting for his recovery. But the man asked if she had mentioned eternal sleep, and he found it funny. The young lady insisted that she believed that one guy would become emperor at the age of 20, and then he would be able to rule the aristocrats. After this, she left the room, and the man turned to her, claiming that he had not given her permission to leave. One of the maids said that His Majesty had a bad cough, and the girl ordered to take care of him. She wondered if she was his companion, realizing that the emperor's voice had broken. Barely making out the words, she didn't expect him to act any differently this time, but it was hard to ignore such attention. The young lady wanted the maid to find people to look after the emperor, realizing that repeating the same thing could be endless. But she was still a human being. She warned that the maid would be responsible for carrying out the order with her head, thinking that she would never love this old man. At this time, someone was watching what was happening from around the corner, and a little later the girl was already in the office. She considered it predictable, since no one wanted to be the emperor's teacher, and after that the boy just slammed the book shut. The protagonist reassured the young man, assuring him that he was innocent and that he could simply relax. She silently noted how timid these aristocrats were, marveling at their cowardice. However, they refused out of fear of her, although if they had paid attention to the boy, everything could have turned out differently. He had the potential to become the master of the year and even the ruler of the country, but no one suspected it. The girl realized she had no choice and decided to take on his training, although the young man was surprised and insisted that she was probably too busy to waste time on him. Nevertheless, the heroine insisted that he not consider himself a burden, since he was, after all, a prince. At that moment, she suddenly realized that such a direct tone was completely uncharacteristic of Ophelia. The girl also clearly felt how strong the distance that had been established between them was, and how this affected their communication. She considered her words and whether she could truly teach him, but she knew she had no choice. So she insisted that if he had no questions, he could return to his chambers, to which the young man agreed. Ophelia felt a sense of rejection when she saw his intense gaze, but at the same time she felt a curiosity that she found difficult to suppress. She wondered how much their relationship could deteriorate as the young man headed towards his room. In addition, he recalled how the day before he had returned alone to his chambers and heard the young lady asking him to find people capable of taking care of the future emperor. The boy couldn't understand what exactly they were talking about until he noticed tears in the girl's eyes, which explained a lot. Now he himself wanted to ask the question and cautiously inquired whether it was possible to do so. The main character wondered what he was talking about and realized that for the first time the initiative came from him. She allowed the question to be asked, wondering if it was related to school, books, or homework, but she couldn't predict the exact topic. However, the young man only asked why she did not put him into eternal sleep immediately after leaving the tower. Ophelia was surprised, but reminded herself that, as she had said earlier, it could be used. She explained that he had to do something when he grew up, and that was the whole answer, after which the young man fell silent. After some time, the heroine clutched the pillow, realizing that he had come again. The Lord would soon get used to being sent for the same reason, but her plan was only just beginning to come to fruition, requiring further preparation. At that moment, someone turned to my lady. It was Emmy, who asked if the girl wanted to take a bath right now. Ophelia refused and asked the maid to simply enter the room, while feeling that something had changed. Emmy brought a new negligee and even replaced the mattress, which turned out to be softer than the previous one, so that the girl felt more comfortable. The maid handed her a flower and said it was for her. Ophelia found this odd and tried to understand why Emmy was smiling so widely. Emmy explained that such a flower could only be found in the mountains in the north, and, fearing that it would wither by tomorrow, she decided to bring it right away. Ophelia recognized this flower. At night it glowed with a bright light, and only aristocrats could obtain it. The mountains to the north were dangerous, full of monsters, abandoned and lifeless, making transporting the flower almost impossible. The girl tried to understand who could have gotten it and given it to her. She was going over all the details again while the maid insisted that the message came from Lord Kristen Kallman Erhard. Ophelia realized that he must have used magic to get the flower into her hands, and she thought of Kristen again. The maid clarified that the new peignoir, mattress, and flower also came from him. The girl guessed that the teddy bear had also been sent by the Lord, and she wondered what was wrong with these gifts. Now it became clear why the maid was smiling like that. Because all this was connected with the Lord and not with herself. Emmy added that the Lord would soon return to see the girl, and Ophelia realized that the chance of putting him into eternal sleep had not increased, which even caused her to get a headache. The girl felt a growing sense of foreboding, as if danger lurked behind Kristen. She felt it was too early to act, but at the same time, she couldn't allow the anxiety to continue to overwhelm her. After these thoughts, Ophelia asked Emmy if she had any common clothes. The maid was slightly surprised and inquired about her mistress's intentions for such a disguise. The heroine soon realized that it was from this moment that their mysterious journey began, like a step into another world, full of the unknown and dangers. The girl realized that her role was to be a servant to the princess, and that the mistress was distinguished by her treachery, which is why Ophelia constantly lived in fear that someone might put her into eternal sleep. Today, they walked the streets of the city, trying to appear like ordinary people, and watching how Lord Erhard carefully looked after my lady, the girl guessed that there was something more between them. Perhaps they had made some kind of silent pact, because the princess had once again decided to secretly leave the palace and head into the city. If anyone discovered their true identities, it would be a real disaster for them. Ophelia realized that they were on the outskirts of the city, where she had never been before, and Emmy wondered how my lady could know about this place. But then the maid couldn't help but think that it would only take one careless mistake for Ophelia to trip or hurt herself, and the consequences could be disastrous for her entire family. Emmy also imagined the dire consequences if the mistress were to catch on something and tear the cloak, immediately causing screams of horror among the relatives. In her mind, the maid prayed for my lady to return, but at the same time she anxiously wondered what might happen if they were already in these dangerous slums. The princess might run into some drunkard, and Emmy was already anticipating a disaster, imagining the trouble that could befall her relatives. The maid cautiously addressed Her Highness, insisting that she could not go out unaccompanied for the safety of herself and her mistress. Milady seemed to have doubts in response, but Emmy reminded her that any unforeseen danger could turn into disaster. She also insisted that her mistress return to the palace, and Ophelia felt her own persecution mania intensify. The girl tripped over a rock and noticed that the road was extremely uneven, after which Emmy screamed and again mentally turned to her family, imagining the possible danger. The main character reflected that, despite efforts to restore the economy, such uneven conditions would hardly allow for any profit. The maid merely warned Milady to be cautious. Ophelia sharply told Emmy to stop screaming, claiming that she was the one creating unnecessary risks, and the maid wondered if her mistress understood that a princess had no place in these slums. The girl noticed that they passed a small alley, the walls of which were covered with multicolored advertisements, creating a feeling of neglect. This place had to be somewhere here, and finally the young lady saw it in front of her, feeling a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. Suddenly, she came across something hard and incomprehensible, and began to carefully touch it, trying to figure out what exactly was in front of her. Ophelia smelled the fish, and at that moment the young man asked with interest what was going on, which caused the heroine a little surprise. She also noticed that the guy was covered in red liquid, and this unexpected turn of events was not at all what she had planned. The girl suddenly stumbled, realizing that falling on the road strewn with nails and broken glass could lead to injury, and if she fell forward, she would fall right into the arms of the young man. However, he grabbed her by the collar in time, preventing her from falling, and then let go, and the young lady cleared her throat with relief, trying to come to her senses. Emmy anxiously hoped that this would not happen and checked to see if everything was all right with my lady, while the young man frowned at how much noise she had made. The maid thanked him for his help, but the boy asked in surprise who he was and how dare he treat a lady like that. Ophelia then told Emmy to stop interfering. The young man noted that the young lady had deliberately led her into this alley, and his motive seemed obvious, after which he pointed to the lying coachman, hinting that the maid's fate might be similar. Emmy was shocked, trying to understand what she heard, and the guy explained that slave traders conduct their transactions here, and the yellow ads are offers to buy. The boy thought about the poor servant girl, thinking that her mistress had probably included her in the list of slaves for sale, and this seemed extremely unfair to him. Meanwhile, Emma was trembling, trying to comprehend what had happened, and the main character understood that she was about to burst into tears and would probably ask for help raising a fuss around her. After this, the main character turned to Emmy, trying to calm her down, explaining that she was not to blame for anything, and that she ended up in this situation by accident. The young man watched the girl try to console the maid. He hadn't encountered such caring aristocrats in a long time, and he wondered what they were doing here. He realized he had likely frightened them greatly, and they would soon leave. However, when the young man was about to leave, the main character stopped him, asking him to be a maid for just 5 minutes to help with a matter that was important to her. Emmy immediately asked what exactly the lady had in mind, and the young man was struck by the unexpected request and slightly surprised by such an initiative. He tried to understand what exactly she meant, but the young lady calmly stated that, as Emmy herself said, she knew this place well and she needed to find something. The main character believed that taking Emmy with her was just as dangerous as leaving her alone. Besides, the young man would waste time worrying about her anyway. So she asked if the guy would mind staying put for a bit, but the young man moved on, asking what exactly she was carrying, since he wasn't particularly concerned about the girl's safety. He thought it would be better for them to return home without taking unnecessary risks, but she was determined. After some time, the young man knocked on one of the doors, and someone asked who was there, causing a slight tension. It turned out that it was a boy, who was probably the youth's brother. He claimed that he knew about his return today in advance. The young man lightly stroked the boy's head, and at first he asked him to stop, but then he fell silent, as if he had sensed something in the atmosphere. The older brother asked in surprise what had happened, and the boy replied that nothing had happened, he had only smelled a pleasant aroma near him. At this time, the maid turned to the young lady, glad that the scoundrel had left, and suggested that my lady return back without delay. But the main character pretended not to hear, and continued walking, and Emmy anxiously asked if she could hear, as there were slave traders lurking around. Ophelia calmly noted that she had business to attend to, and she continued on her way. The girl realized that the bar with the shining yellow sign was the meeting place of the mercenary guild. She offered to explain in detail why she had come all this way to acquire the man she needed. This was the man she needed. Ophelia realized that the man named Now was a renowned mercenary who had fallen into slavery due to poverty. After some time, the girl studied the contract and noted that Now was quite expensive. She understood that his role in the future romance and in her own plan was extremely important. At this time, the maid brought tea and cake for afternoon tea for the lady, trying not to break tradition. However, the girl asked to return the treat back, since there would be no tea party today, and the woman humbly agreed. The main character again approached the guy, inquiring about the origin of the Serniki, to which he only replied that there was no point in dredging up the past. She emphasized that she was now his mistress and the most important person for him, and Ophelia considered this a commendable step. The young man caught the girl's familiar scent, after which she took the contract and reminded him that she was now his mistress, as he himself had previously admitted. She demanded an explanation for the bruises and why he had been sold to her. Ophelia was amazed at who could have inflicted such suffering on such an important figure, with his keen gaze and icy voice. The young man's unfriendliness and hostility towards others was fueled by years of service in the ranks of mercenaries, making him cold to outsiders. He might have seemed tough, but he loved his younger brother with all his heart, and that's why readers adored him, despite the opinions of others. The girl was surprised how they could sell her a slave covered in bruises from head to toe, and she felt the deep injustice of this act. However, she understood that as his new mistress, she could restore justice and protect him. If a slave was beaten without cause, she would not leave it unanswered. The young man explained that this punishment had been chosen by his former master, Gil Jin, and he was furious to learn that he was being sold to an aristocrat. The young lady sat down on the table, snorted, and noted that he had already realized that she was an aristocrat. demonstrating ease and confidence. The young man declared that it didn't matter and now she would be his mistress forever, and the main character could barely contain her laughter watching his naivete. She thought about his naivete, but she realized that it was time to get down to business and act according to plan. Ophelia asked how long he intended to kneel and whether he could untie the knot. The young man immediately broke the rope on his hands, showing his determination. After this, the main character approached him, removed the blindfold, and praised him, calling him a good boy, fulfilling the tradition of the mistress. According to tradition, it is the mistress who should remove the blindfold from her slave's eyes, and the young man remembered the girl's request to be with the maid for 5 minutes. In shock, he asked himself if this was the girl he met yesterday in the alley, and the main character only smiled, without giving a direct answer. She approached and introduced herself as Ophelia Dine Raidani, and the boy had probably heard that name, since she was the crown princess of the empire. The young man was stunned. Could she really be a princess? And was this place really a palace? The heroine advised him not to be too surprised and to accept the situation. Her wish was for him to become her bodyguard, a kind of mercenary capable of protecting her in all dangerous situations. The young man briefly considered whether she really needed someone like that. But the mad princess had her own dark plans. She was going to commit an assassination attempt, and the target of her actions, as it seemed to him, was clearly the prince. A moment later, the young man is shocked and thinks she's trying to act against the prince, declaring to herself that he can't carry out her orders. The girl merely explains that he misunderstood her words. She points to herself, explaining that when the time comes, he will have to put her into eternal sleep in the most painless way possible, and that will be her specific order. The young man, confused, tries to comprehend her words, not understanding what exactly she means. Meanwhile, the young lady seems fully prepared for the possibility of his resistance. However, she is confident she has a plan. They can work together, arranging everything so that it appears she did it all herself. And after that, the young man can move to a place she has specially prepared, where he will live out the rest of his life. The girl then throws jewelry and coins at his feet, causing him surprise and bewilderment. The main character claims that these treasures will be hers, hoping that the guy will not refuse such a lucrative offer, because for him this is a real profitable deal. With this money, he and his brother will be able to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. If he doesn't know what to do with it, she's ready to help, and the young man certainly won't refuse such an opportunity. The girl also reminds him that this will be his slave contract, but the young man immediately interrupts her, declaring that he refuses such a role. He explains that even though he is her servant, he will not carry out this order. The young lady understands that now has always felt a greater disgust for Ophelia than anyone else in the world. Even Eudes hadn't disgusted him so much. Now was Eudes's right-hand man and one of those who betrayed Ophelia, so she was overcome with horror every time he approached. For her, this guy represents betrayal and hatred towards the mistress, and now that she has given her consent to be plunged into eternal sleep, he refuses to fulfill her will. The young man claims he'd rather plunge himself into eternal sleep than harm his mistress. The protagonist wonders why he hid his involvement in human trafficking with the guild at her brother's request. She considers him a scoundrel and is indignant. The young lady wonders, is this enough? And reminds him of his personal castle, to which the young man merely offers to perform the dive without any unnecessary conditions. Then the young lady throws jewelry at him again, getting angry, and the young man reacts calmly, without getting into an argument. He simply agrees that if she wants to bury him under the jewelry, he won't object and is willing to wait. The girl reflects on how difficult it must be to deal with him, considering she once took a man's life with those same jewelry. She's surprised that he doesn't trust her promises. Realizing it's too early to use her brother in this matter, she thinks he's a selfish bastard, caring only about his own well-being. At that moment, someone knocks on the door, and the young lady orders them not to enter, explaining that there will be no tea. Then comes an apology. The heroine recognizes the voice and realizes it's familiar to her. The boy explains that Ophelia said he could ask her any question at any time. The main character is slightly surprised and understands that now she needs to try to lure Now to her side before he meets with Eudes. However, he remains stubborn and does not respond to her words, insisting on his decision, ignoring her requests. Anyone could misunderstand their situation, seeing them in such a state. The young lady still hopes the boy will consider her request, although he again repeats that it would be better for her to be put into eternal sleep. She feels irritated and angry because of his stubbornness, after which she goes out into the hallway to the boy to find out what happened. The main character is curious about what's going on, and the boy turns to the princess, saying he needs to tell her something. She asks him to do it later. The young woman asks if he'd like to join her at a festival in the capital that's about to begin. Eudice is surprised to think there's a celebration going on, and the woman confirms that yes, it will be fascinating and interesting to watch. Meanwhile, Now is still sitting in his room, surrounded by decorations, not understanding what is happening around him, his thoughts wandering in confusion. The main character heads to the festival in the capital, realizing that Nao's brother Nayu must be somewhere there among the people and events, ready for his business. Nayu has to sell flowers and earn extra money secretly because Nayu is a slave of the guild and does not have complete freedom of movement, but is forced to earn money on his own. He cannot come home whenever he wants, and this makes his fate especially touching and difficult, evoking a feeling of compassion in the heroine. Understanding this, the girl decides to use Naya as a kind of leverage so that Nao will have to obey her and act in her interests. The young lady recalls that Nayu once claimed that he would not carry out orders that could harm a member of the imperial family, and this strengthens her doubts. She understands that she tried to avoid pressure, but unfortunately, it cannot be avoided, and there is practically no other way out. The main character must force him to obey at any cost, and she watches the boy, who looks around with interest, as if he is seeing the world for the first time. Understanding that, after a long imprisonment in the tower, Nayu's impressionability is quite natural, the girl gently accepts his surprise and attention to detail. She notices how cotton candy is being made and, turning to him, tells him that she is tired, while inviting him to sit down nearby and look around. The young man asks if this is true, and the girl immediately covers his mouth with a piece of cotton candy, reminding him that he should not say her title out loud, so as not to cause a stir. She asks him not to go far, ties a bandage around her neck, and adds that it is already starting to get cold, while the young man wonders if she will leave him here alone. After this, the heroine calms the boy, telling him to have fun and not worry about anything, and he gradually agrees, reflecting on how difficult it is to understand her intentions. Meanwhile, the main character continues to search for Naya, wondering where he might be, while Eudice moves around the city, looking around and rejoicing at the small sum of money Shayna gave him, 5 shillings. Now the young man can afford to have a little fun and is wondering where to go when a boy approaches him with an offer to buy flowers for a small price, only 5 shillings to give to someone as a sign of respect. This boy turns out to be Nao's brother Nayu, and Yude considers the offer, and after a while he is already heading towards his sister, holding flowers in his hands. The main character is surprised by his quick return, since she hasn't yet managed to find Naya, and notes that she didn't expect him to call her sister instead of princess, which causes her quiet surprise. She asks if he has returned, but the young man only holds out the flowers, asking permission to give them to her and thanking her for the care she has shown in teaching and supporting him. The young man thinks that the princess is unpredictable and remembers Shayna's words about this girl being dangerous. But he doesn't want to see her tears, and he wonders if he should ask her not to cry anymore. However, he only claims that he simply bought flowers and wanted to give them as a gift, and the main character inhales their aroma and smiles, noting the pleasant smell while stroking the boy on the head. The young man is embarrassed and realizes that he should thank her for letting him go, and he tries to find words to express his gratitude, after which she reminds him of the need to study economics. The young man asks what this means, and the girl explains that if he accidentally left his scarf on the flower, then he made a big mistake, because it was worth 400 gold bars, and now he has to return to the books. He looks at his neck and realizes that the scarf is missing, without understanding when it happened, and wonders if some child took it, since the man was offering Naya a closer look at the flowers. The young man approaches Eudes, and at that moment, his scarf is taken off, after which he cries out, assuring that it was Nayu who did this, having bought the flower from him and probably robbed him. The main character wonders if the guy bought the flower from Nayu and realizes that this is a great twist, because as the main character, he was in the right place at the right time. The boy believes that if they return to this young man, they will be able to return the scarf, but the heroine only reflects on what happened, wondering if Eudes robbed Naya. After a while, they go in that direction, and the main character asks the boy to wait, offering to go together, realizing that she cannot keep up with him alone because she wants to find Naya in another way. A little later, the young man notices Naya and exclaims loudly, recognizing him, after which he sternly addresses him, demanding that he return the scarf, but sees that he falls to the floor, needing help. The same large man who was with him before appears behind Naya, and the heroine realizes that this is the bandit she met in her past life, who forced Naya to steal and took all the profits. The man judges the boy as bad and wonders if he is going to trick him by promising to teach him a lesson, after which they can move on, creating a tense situation. Youth realizes that the man is lying, because the princess gave him the scarf, and the boy was only asking for help, unaware of what would happen next, leaving the main character to ponder the intricacies of this story. Now the young man realizes what happened, and together with the main character, they prepare to deal with the consequences, maintaining the tension and importance of each action, because many events still lie ahead. At this point, the story continues, but all the key elements, the search for Nayu, the interaction with Eudes, and the importance of the flower and scarf, remain central to the proceedings, giving the plot momentum. The young lady carefully observes every action, assesses the consequences, and prepares to direct events in the right direction to maintain control of the situation and protect her loved ones. Eudes is still pondering how to return to order, while Nayu is gradually coming to his senses, realizing that he was part of a cunning game where every step is important and can change the future outcome. The boy is confident that if they work together, they can correct mistakes, return the scarf, and restore justice. But the main character continues to watch, thinking about the possible consequences. A little while later, they are already heading to the right place, and the heroine asks the young man to wait a little, offering to go together, realizing that it will be more difficult to act alone and a coordinated action is needed. The girl reflects that it is difficult to keep up with them, because she needs to find Naya, but she wants to do it in a safer and more prudent way, without unnecessary risk and chaos. Soon the young man sees Naya and cries out with joy, pointing at him, after which he sternly demands the return of the scarf but sees that he has fallen to the ground, losing his balance and needs support. The call for help reaches those present, and a large man who was with him earlier appears behind Nayu, causing alarm and fear in all participants, because he controlled him before. The main character realizes that this thug is a bandit, who forced Naya to steal and take all the profits, and remembers that she encountered him in a past life, which adds to the tension. The man condemns Naya, considering him bad, and expresses doubt that he will be able to avoid punishment, promising to teach him a lesson personally, after which they can go, demonstrating the severity of the situation. At this point, Youth realizes that the man is lying, because the princess gave him the scarf, and the boy was only asking for help, not suspecting that everything would turn out this way, and this adds drama and tension to the story. All events unfold, leaving the heroes in a situation where they must act quickly, consider the consequences, and make decisions that will determine the future course of the story. The protagonist continues to watch, pondering the intricacies and how best to use the current situation to maintain control and protect Naya and Yuta, preparing for the next step. At this time, the bandit snatches the scarf from the guy's hands, but he doesn't give it up and claims that it will help him save his brother. The main character then understands that this is what is going on, and that it was because of her brother that Nayu refused to give up the catch and also stumbled upon her while fleeing from pursuit. The girl also looks at Yuta, and the boy is just thinking whether he can stand up for this guy, because the princess is nearby. The main character only turns to him, and puts her hand on the boy's shoulder and asks what they will do with this young man. Yuris addresses Her Highness with a little surprise and also states that he thinks stealing is bad, but abandoning a child in trouble is also wrong, and he should be saved. The main character then says the boy is kind and asserts that if that's his wish, so be it. Then the main character snaps her fingers and calls for the guards. Several knights immediately appear from around the corner, but Youth is only frightened. The girl then tells the knight to make this man beg for mercy. A fight ensues, and the boy asks if the guards were following them. The young lady replies that they were, and she was afraid their presence would bother him, so she asked everyone to hide until she called. The main character thinks how simple it all is, after which she turns to the boy and asks if he can become one. The girl understands that this young man should be grateful to them, after which she extends her hand to him and understands that with the help of Yota, she easily became closer to Nayu. The young lady then smiles and the boy almost cries and extends his hand to her and thanks her. A little while later, the boy is already lying near the young lady's knees, and she tells the boy not to worry because the young man has fallen asleep and is overtired. The girl also strokes Naya on the head and says that it's interesting whether he is good in himself or if it's only because of his brother. And now Nayu is in her hands. Nayu, meanwhile, watches all this in shock and then becomes completely enraged. The protagonist tells him to calm down and understands it's time to move on to the next step. After which, the young lady asks if she will do as she's ordered or if she'd rather enter into eternal sleep with Nayu. Well, after this, the young man simply gets down on one knee and states that since Nayu is with the lady, he cannot help but obey, so he will become her servant and will be on her side for the rest of his life. The main character then realizes in shock that it worked, and also claims that he will plunge her into eternal sleep with one blow so that it will be graceful. To which the young man replies that she did not say anything about this last time. The girl claims that they will discuss the details later, and she definitely mentioned a painless end to life, and the guy claims that it will be fulfilled. Ophelia realizes Now is naive and believes everything. She then suggests they leave for now, so as not to disturb Now's sleep, and then they head into the corridor, after which the young lady throws something to the young man, and he immediately grabs it. When he opens his palm and doesn't look, he asks what it is. The girl replies that it's a shape-shifting ring and a precious object made of magical stones, and from now on she will call him Sir Philip, and let him get used to his new identity and act thoughtfully from now on. The young man then puts the ring on your finger and asks if he can ask you a question. The girl is wondering what kind of question this is about the guy claiming that he thought a lot when he was alone, so he wonders why a person like her, who has everything, is so eager to plunge into eternal sleep. The young lady is a little surprised by this question, after which she states that she would like to. She answered so he would understand and now addressed him as Philip. At this point, the maid was very nervous, and one of them asks why this had to happen on their shift, because if the princess finds out, then they will be finished and heads will roll. A little while later, the main character states that from that day on, Nayu will live in the armory. So let Eudice become friends with him, and there is also someone else she needs to introduce to them. After which another guy enters the room and the young lady claims that in the future he will serve you two. And this guy's name is Philip. The young man then claims his name is Philip, and the main character realizes that these Chera are great. After all, he's become a completely different person. Eudice wonders if this guy is really going to serve. Even the wind could blow him away. At this time, Philip turns to the prince and asserts that no matter what he orders, he will do everything, which frightens the young man. And the main character just pokes him in the side and whispers that now he is not a mercenary but a servant, so he should make a simpler face. After which the young man apologizes, admitting he's still not used to it. He also claims to thank the prince and Naya in advance. The main character at this time only smiles and understands that the festival will end and winter will soon come, and after that the emperor will rest in peace. Then the plot will begin to come to life in full, and even though the future in which a bad ending awaits her cannot be changed, but her end will be terrible, and now will plunge her into eternal sleep. The young man asks what happened to Now. It's not like he's staying in the palace because of threats. The young lady claims he, like him, was hired to be Eudice's partner. Housing and security are also guaranteed, as is a huge amount of money, thanks to which the brother will not have to work for the rest of his life. The girl claims that she arranged everything better than his older brother could, but Philip then tells the lady not to joke, because Nayu is still a child. And if she harms him, he swears she will. However, the girl interrupts him and asks if he will really put her into eternal sleep. And yet, it is charming. The guy then asks to take his words seriously. However, when Ophelia steps further, then suddenly she begins to be enveloped in smoke, and Philip, still worried, turns to Her Highness. Then he closes it and screams, "What's that smoke? And is someone really trying to kill the princess?" The young lady then replies, "No." After which, they actually see bunnies, and she thinks how obvious it is, and how such a mischievous and blushing spell could only be used by one person. At this time, the maid turns to Her Highness and apologizes, and also claims that they told him that she refuses to accept him, but while she was with the prince, she was at the festival. Then Lord Kristen came and cast a spell on the garden. Philip then asks what they were talking about, and he claims that if they know who's behind this, they should arrest him. But the main characters don't respond that it wasn't an assassination attempt, but a gift from a guest. After which the young man asks if they are serious, because such actions on the sly are a declaration of war. The young lady only tells him to watch where he steps, but at that very moment a rabbit flies out from his partner, and he claims that he must grab it. The main character understands that now is right because Kristen will not give up and will continue to come. He will attract attention with his noisy gifts until it leads to gossip. And perhaps that's what he's trying to achieve. The young lady then looks at the rabbit and thinks how cute he is, after which she brings him closer to her and asks why Kristen continues to come to her. A little while later, the girl is already in the carriage, and her maid is wondering why the mistress suddenly decided to go to the Earhart estate, since she herself refused to meet with the lord, after which the maid reports that they have arrived. The lord looks out the window in shock, then turns around, and the main character wonders if she made a mistake in coming to Kristen's. Meanwhile, the servants shout that the princess has arrived and tell her to hurry and invite her into the drawing room. One of them asks where the gentleman is, and the other replies that he is in the shower, and a little while later the young lady is already sitting on the sofa. But she understands that it looks like she was mistaken, and also thinks what kind of person this guy is. And she can't understand what his goal is, and whether it really is to ignore her now. The girl also understands that if she loses her temper, everything will be even worse, and she thinks who Kristen really is, and that the fact that he is her ex-husband and also the owner of the magic tower is nonsense. The girl also understands that she knows Prince Eudice very well, but not the princess herself. And to take the throne, they'll have to rebel, because that's the only way. At this point, the young man bursts into the room, and he turns to Her Highness. He also comes closer and asks if Ophelia has come to see him. The girl then realizes that Kristen's desire for power could have gone unnoticed, only because he hides his intentions well. After which the young lady becomes a little embarrassed and tells the lord to dry himself, although she thinks that even so he looks great. The guy at this time is just approaching and claims that as soon as he heard about her arrival, he immediately rushed over. After which he asks what he owes to the visit of such a precious person in the middle of the night. The girl then thinks how awkward she is, and that he himself forced her to come, and she does not understand what he is thinking and why this happened. The young lady also looks at his grin and understands that they are twisting her as they please, after which she claims that she has a request. But not to him, but to Sir Assad. Well then, the girl approaches this young man, and he apologizes. And he also asks if my lady really came to him and not to Kristen, after which he asks why. The girl replies that she had heard about his outstanding skills in martial arts, and therefore wanted to ask him to become the prince's mentor. The blonde is very surprised after this, and also claims that this is a great honor for him. The mage merely kicks one of the swords. Meanwhile, Assad wonders if the girl really came all this way just for this. Kristen also turns to the young lady and says that it would be better for them to talk in the living room. because the training hall is dangerous and full of sharp swords. The young lady then says that as for danger, she recently threatened her. Then she realized that it would be impossible to avoid such situations because you stumble upon them like daggers, and you can also deal with them if... But when young ladies try to lift this sword, they can. Well, she understands that she thought he was easy, after which the girl claims that if you accept the fact that anything can happen and you don't lose your vigilance. At this time, the magician helps her with his magic, and the girl understands that this is a very useful thing. The blonde-haired boy says that this is beautifully said, while Keynes claims that he is giving her this blade. He also suggests that my lady get down to business. So the girl steps out and declares that she has no further business with him. So she asks to forgive her for the late visit. But the magician asks if she really will just leave. He also laughs and claims the girl has fooled him. The young lady then only sighs and thinks her escape route is clear, but the guy wonders if she still has something to say, since he's ready to listen. The girl understands that this is tricky, but after what happened, she should have asked such a question. However, he lost everything, and the young lady claims that the principal requires a teacher for general subjects. She also understands that it is worth keeping Kristen close to her, after which the young man says that it is good or he will take up training growth, such as the desire of the young lady. Ophelia understands that she needs to keep it with her, just like this blade, after which the girl says that it's great and she wants to say something else. She then turns to Kristen and claims that she can only rely on him in this matter, and the young lady wonders if he could revive this flower and use a preservation spell on it. The guy then asks if it is lavender, and the girl replies that she received it as a gift and that the flower, although simple, is dear to her. The boy claims it sounded sad and uses magic on the flower. Ophelia realizes that when the boy used magic, a warm light emanated from his hand, and it brought back good memories. The young man asks permission to say something, and he claims his opinion is slightly different. The main character asks what he's talking about. Well, the guy just stops using magic on the blade, after which the girl cannot hold it. The young lady then asks what he is doing, and the magician asks if she knows that there is no way to control a dangerous thing. And the bigger and more valuable the gift, the better. Ophelia claims she'll pretend nothing happened, and let him not send her gifts anymore, but the young man asks why, and she can accept them. After all, she is a princess, and therefore deserves all the best, but nothing compares. With this pathetic flower, the girl then repeats that she has one more request, that he stop drawing attention to the imperial palace. A little while later, she realizes that since then, Kristen has become quiet, and she continues to worry. The worst thing is that she doesn't know what goal he's pursuing, and she needs it right now. However, then the girl hears someone clearing their throat and realizes that this is a gathering of wayward, proud aristocrats. That is, the Imperial Council. At this moment, a man asks if the lady enjoyed the festival. And since she's rested, it's time to think about matters of state. The girl realizes it's Duke Sarkat. He is Ophelia's maternal uncle and a great man, after which the girl asks what is on the agenda. The man replies that, in short, a group of doctors recently visited the slums. They say that they tore the flesh with utensils similar to cutlery and then sewed it up, saying that it was a treatment. The main character wonders if these are doctors, after which she says that it's good and let there be more of them. Well, the man just bangs on the table and then screams, "What is m'lady talking about?" After all, they must be exterminated and it is their duty. The healing must be provided by the divine power of a priest in a temple. But the main character wonders if this really means anything. That only the rich and well-born will be treated, but instead of listening to this, she needs to think about her answer to Kristen. Meanwhile, on the other side of the palace, the prince is hiding from someone. At this time, the maid comes up to him and asks what he is doing there, and at this time, Nayu calls him. The maid then says that the prince needs to return because he has a history lesson with Lord Kristen. Yuta was also tormented by a vague feeling. The magician then asserted that today is the wisdom of all times and places. And the young man understands that this is Kristen, and he is the man whom the princess sent away many times. His name alone scared her so much that she dropped her utensils, and now he is his teacher. The young man also understands that he needs to find out whether the princess herself appointed him, after which he turns to Sir Assad, who asks what happened. After which the prince approaches the guy and claims that he heard that Lord Kristen is a magician, and asks if it is possible that he brainwashed the princess. At this time, the young man with blonde hair claims that his name is Assad Erhard and Kristen is his younger brother, after which the young man, in shock, realizes that even his older brother is there and then it is worth asking her directly. But the guy also realizes they haven't seen each other since the festival. He also looks at Naya, and he understands that since the girl introduced them, does this mean that he is special to her, after which the guy wonders if they are really like brothers. And will they have to compete with each other to find out who is better and the loser will be eliminated, after which the young man rises from his seat and the teacher asks if something is wrong. After which the boy simply replies that he is not in the mood and runs out of the room. A little while later, the maid approaches the young man and says that here he is. Shayna also asks if he really left in the middle of the lesson to avoid having lunch with the princess, and the young man then understands that she definitely said that they would have lunch together, but she'll likely soon invite Naya to join in. The young man is also wondering why everything is like this, and whether, after all this, she really considers him her enemy. Shayna claims that the gentleman had a table set in the garden, and when he came there, he saw flowers there. He gave them to the lady and asked if they were really them. Of course, he replied that they were, and that my lady had asked Lord Kristen to cast a preservation spell on them. After this, Youth is surprised and thinks about the princess, and the girl at this time leaves this meeting and says that this is where it can end. Someone then claims that he will ask to bring a simple snack and they could continue, but the girl replies that no, and the prince is waiting for her. However, when the young lady comes out, her uncle claims the child is a problem. Ophelia realizes she must make the right choice for both the founder's direct descendant and the princess's maternal relative. The Duke of the Sarkart family, who has great authority, does not care about Yuta. The girl is considering whether she would prefer to talk to the cunning politician, or lunch with Eudice, which will plunge her into eternal sleep in the future, but lunch definitely tips the scales, so she quickly has to come up with an excuse to leave. Meanwhile, someone else approaches Her Highness and claims they haven't seen each other in a while. At this time, the boy is sitting at the table and understands that the princess said that they would always dine together. He also looks at the flowers and realizes that he thought that she would throw them away, after which the young man sees someone approaching the table and confirming that she has arrived. When he looks in that direction, he only sees Naya. The maid speaks to His Highness. Something suddenly happened to the princess, so she asked Naya to replace her at dinner. At this point, the boy wishes His Highness bon appétit. A little while later, the main character thinks how good it is that she left the Duke. But she still thinks why she was called such a long way, and why Eudice is treating you and him so cruelly, since they are not relatives. The girl also recalls that she met Assad Erhard there, and she asked what brought him there. Well, then the young man realized that it was curious what a prominent political figure is. How the Duke asked to meet a simple guy, and she is afraid that he will become another expendable resource for the Duke. After which she realizes she needs to chat him up before he says anything more about her. And when she merely addresses the young man, he insists that it was the first time the girl had come to the Erhard estate in the middle of the night. Everything the guy says seems to fall like a heavy stone on the shoulders of the young lady, and the Duke only looks at her with suspicion. The main character then asks what brought him here, and the guy replies that he would really like the girl to honor him by showing her how magnificent the big palace is. Then the main character says that they can go, but the Duke asks if there is a need now, to which the girl replies that yes, and now. A little while later, the blonde-haired boy claims that the wind is getting stronger and puts his cape on her. The girl then realizes that no one in the Erhard family has any political competence, and he wants a love scandal to break out regarding his relationship with the evil princess. The guy notices people looking at them and insists that's the point, swearing he didn't mean to. The girl realizes she's glad he at least realized his mistake. After which, the young man notices a leaf in her hair and says that he will remove it, but the main character only whispers for him to stop. after which the young man becomes even more embarrassed and tells Her Highness that he is terribly guilty. But besides stupid Kristen, he no longer has any relatives from his childhood. He only practiced fencing, and learning etiquette proved too much for him. The young lady then tells him there's no need to apologize, and to just take his coat and they can continue on their way. But the guy then says that it's okay, and she can keep it for herself, but he also says that the girl looks sad. The main character wonders if it's really that noticeable, but the guy just suggests that she move on. After all, the high priest is waiting for them. The protagonist realizes at this point that, despite all her efforts to distance herself from the Duke, but she thinks that the reason why the high priest wants to meet her is precisely because of him. At this time, the man asks Her Highness whether she will simply let the doctors get away with it, after which the young lady realizes this is expected, and the meeting continues. The man then says that the young lady should personally handle their arrest. Ophelia then asks if he is talking about those who cut other people's flesh to make a diagnosis, while the young man with blonde hair is pouring tea, after which he hands it to the young lady and asks her to drink, but the girl is only thinking about what to do. The entire priest is on the side of the aristocrats, and if she insults them, then Eudice will ultimately deal with her cruelly, well, since she has now in her hands. Then she will play out this moment in her own way, so now the girl claims that she has decided about it, that doctors should be rewarded for their good work, and that she doesn't care about aristocrats. The priest is a little surprised after this, and also claims that this campaign will meet with fierce resistance. He is also interested in whether he can find out the reason for the young lady's decision, and she replies that she is not obligated to explain anything. Well, in short, no matter what the outcome, she will continue to insist on her own. And he also understands that no matter how hard she tries to please him, her problems will definitely not bother them, so this time let them curry favor with Eudice. The young lady also argues that people need treatment, so they are obliged to provide it, and she thinks that even if she has to be criticized, she will still do it. After this, the man just smiles and says that it's clear that the girl is a good person. At this time, the main character is in shock, wondering what they are talking about, and the young man with blonde hair claims that the princess will not let them down. And he always believed that she was very devoted and also good-natured, and that not everyone could understand that. The guy also claims that he heard from Nayu about her magnanimous act, and he and the high priest agree with her position regarding doctors. The main character then claims that she is not loyal or good-natured at all, and that she can become good by committing just one good deed, and they are greatly exaggerating. The girl understands that their attempts to push her against the wall are very exhausting, and she feels nothing but anxiety. Well, the blonde guy at this time tells my lady that the child she saved believes that she is good. At this time, the girl realizes that everything is starting to spin before her eyes, but she thinks, what's wrong with that? After all, although Nayu is smart, he is also too naive and thinks that all people are good, and who else would have the courage to speak ill of her? The young lady also appeals to the high priest, and he asks what kind of tea it is, to which the man replies that it is with herbs and that it is a gift from one of his guests. He also claims that the young lady looks tired and the tea should help relieve fatigue, after which the man asks if he should call her escort, to which the girl replies that there is no need and that she is fine. It would also be better if they sent a priest to her palace, and she would like to ask him for a favor. The girl also realizes that her reflection is in the tea, shows her true emotions that she tries to hide, and then the priest tells Her Highness that they will end here, and also suggests that she take a good rest. At this time, the girl realizes that she remembered the day when she felt so helpless that she only had enough strength to cry, and she screamed how this could happen to her, since it was not her fault. Now, the young lady leans to the side and understands that she needs to rest, and also collect all the bad memories and throw them into the tower, above the one where Eudice was locked up, in a private, high, massive tower. The young lady understands that the boy has been through much pain and suffering, after which, in her thoughts, she apologizes to him for this and for the fact that he had to go through so much. She also thinks that perhaps such thoughts will calm her mind and prepare her for the end, which is already approaching. At this time, someone else is standing near the church and watching the girl fall asleep. A little while later, the girl wakes up from the fact that someone is talking to her. It turns out to be a young man with blonde hair, and he claims that it is time to return to the palace. At this time, someone turns to the guy and tells him to stay where he is, and also asks how he dares to ignore his order. And the boys also call this young man Isaac Belhervain. They also cry out that he is a commoner of low birth. Therefore, he should not even hope to leave after he hit the Duke in the face, who studied at the academy since childhood and speaks 3 foreign languages. The blonde-haired young man then asks to let the lady accompany her home, and then the girl leaves, and the other guys just scream that this guy is pathetic and worthless. A little while later, the main character heads somewhere and realizes that her nerves were on edge. She also tried to finish the meeting as quickly as possible, but still missed lunch with the prince. The girl also heads to one road and understands that the boys were supposed to go along this path for a walk, and also thinks whether she should look at them. She also thinks that Yutu enjoys spending time with Nayu, and no matter what people say, the author of the novel would agree with that they are on very, very good terms with each other. Well, at that very moment, the young lady sees. As the guy walks away with a very angry expression on his face, a frightened Nayu walks right behind him. The main character then asks in shock what happened, and the prince at this time realizes that the meeting has not ended. But the princess said she would dine with him. After which, the young lady approaches the two, and he asks if they've eaten yet. Eudice is a little surprised and realizes the girl hasn't forgotten her promise, and she traveled all the way there to fulfill it. The main character simply turns to the prince and asks if he sees her. After all, Nayu is a good boy, and the girl asks him if he agrees with this. She also says it's okay if they skip today's class. And he also understands that whatever the reason for Yuda's anger, the first thing to do now is to calm him down. At this time, the main character asks if they want to drink tea with her, after which the 2 young men feel puzzled. Well, the prince only replies that no, and he must finish the homework that the Lord gave him. The young lady then tells him to wait and wonders if this is all because of her. But she kept her distance from him, but it still happened. At this time, Nayu only asks what he should do, and the main character apologizes and asks what he is talking about. After which the boy claims that the prince is in a bad mood, and the young lady asks if it is because of him. At this time, the boy only asserts that this is the nature of people, even when his younger brother is still in his mother's womb. The sister can't wait to see him, but as soon as he's born, she starts to be filled with anxiety, and it took him quite a while to observe such difficult relationships between his sister and brother to come to this conclusion. Ophelia looks at the boy with a little surprise, and also wonders if Eudice is jealous, but she understands that he is most likely trying to remain on guard to keep his distance from her. At this time, the boy asks if the princess knows how long the prince has been waiting for her, and he spent the entire dinner looking at his watch with a sad look. After which, the young man also claims that he thinks they should talk, because everything has a reason, and the prince's sadness is no exception. Or he is afraid that Her Highness will have to figure out for herself what is going on. Their main character wonders if this boy is really only 10 years old. Then the girl goes somewhere and thinks whether Eudice is really jealous or whether Nayu got it all wrong. The girl also realizes that the mere thought of this angers her, and she'll do anything just to make things go according to her plan. Ophelia also wonders why the principal has suddenly started acting this way, and what to make of it. At this time, someone else turns to Milady and states that her meeting will continue after noon, and the girl understands that it is all because of Eudice. He also messed up her schedule, after which the young lady turns to Lord Kristen, and he asks if he cancelled today's class, to which he replies that Assad will conduct it and that physical training is also important. The young man then conjures a bouquet and says that it is for a young lady, and the main character wonders if he is really doing this again. The girl also claims that she told him back then not to give her anything else, but the young man then only claims that her refusal broke his heart, and he does not know how else to demonstrate his sincerity to her. The guy also wonders why she's so cold only to him, but the young lady, meanwhile, is only addressing Lord Kristen, and she also asks what brought him there, since he constantly complains about her coldness. and therefore, he won't behave the same way and answer her question. The guy then just looks at her and insists that's the point. But he interrupts and asks the lady to come closer to him, to which the girl is only surprised. And the guy claims that he will tell her everything, so let her listen carefully. The main character understands that this looks like a trap, but she still approaches him and states that she hopes he will not do anything disrespectful towards her. However, the guy at that very moment hugs her and brings her closer to him and asks if he could do anything bad to the princess. The young man then claims that he was looking for a meeting with her, and the main character thinks that his eyes have changed. After which the young man claims that he did this because, but at the same moment, he feels a sharp pain. The young lady then asks if he is okay, to which the guy replies that yes and everything is fine, but squeezes the girl's hand. Ophelia claims that he is hurting her, after which the young man is surprised and apologizes. He also claims that he will tell her everything later and begins to use movement magic. Ophelia understands that this is the first time she has seen Kristen in so much pain and wonders if everything will be okay with him. But he is in good health. But the girl still understands that she doesn't have the slightest idea about what just happened. The young lady also understands that in the novel Eudice, childhood was like an endless chain of lonely days. The suffering he experienced was as painful as if he had to swallow a block of ice. And the girl understands that the guy really does crave love and care, even if he is jealous, as Nayu suggested. Then she must not open her heart to him under any circumstances. After which the young lady merely takes her hand from him, and the boy sobs. And she also addresses her mother. The young lady sees that he's still sleeping, but she still feels unwell. A little while later, the boy is already heading through the garden and realizes that today is ideal weather for a walk. The guy also realizes that last night he had a strange dream that made his day better. And the young man thinks, "Isn't this amazing?" and puts his hand on his heart and understands that this place always hurts. But today he felt better, and the boy understands that the lesson will start soon, so it's time to go back. However, when the young man turns the corner, he sees the main character sleeping. He then asks in shock if this is really the princess. He also understands that the girl is not moving, and also wonders if she has fallen into eternal sleep, after which he extends his hand to the girl and thinks that her face is very pale. But she begins to move. After which the young man becomes frightened and falls to the floor. The main character opens her eyes, and he asks what is wrong, but the young man only becomes embarrassed and claims that he thought that she had stopped breathing. The guy also thinks what a fool he is, because he couldn't just stand and look at her. The girl then states that the lesson will start soon, and if he has any questions, he should ask Naya. But the guy then thinks why the girl is talking about him again, after which he only talks. He understood that he would do so, but he still understood that the pain in his heart had suddenly returned. Ophelia claims that he doesn't have to do as she said, and that he is free to choose. However, when there are friends, the pain subsides. The boy then asks if the girl knows that he is in pain, and the young lady notes that everyone must overcome such feelings in order to grow, and she can't threaten him forever, and of course he can't do the same to her. Ophelia understands that this is an unchangeable truth, and there is something else she cannot change. After which the young lady asserts that her closest person is only Yoyet. She also understands that she has come to this conclusion, and he says that no matter what people say, he will always be her younger brother, after which the girl tells him to join in, or he will be late. The young man does just that and tells the princess to have a good rest. He also realizes he didn't expect her to call him her younger brother and her closest friend. After which the guy also thinks whether it is possible that the princess is also suffering from similar pain. A little while later, the magician is already conducting his lesson, and claims that if they look at the long history of the empire, they will see that not only loving families were in cahoots, but even sworn enemies agreed to act together. So let them understand that not everything they see is true. At this time, the guy thinks about these words and remembers the princess, and also understands that nothing in the world is unambiguous. After all, the princess has everything she wants, but she can also be torn apart by pain. Carson asserts at this time that the general knowledge test is over, and after the break they will move on to the main lesson. A short time later, the boy is already devouring the sweets and realizes he needs to recharge his brain with something sweet. Meanwhile, Carson insists that these are the Empire's signature sweets. And Nayu claims the palace is full of them, and he's also glad he can eat so many different things. The magician says that thanks to the princess's rule, all is calm in the Empire. But from their lessons, they know how extensive its legal possibilities are, yet sometimes people resist its decisions because they are ahead of their time. Nayu then claims that he thinks the princess is wonderful, and Mac replies that even if someone doesn't like her, over time he will realize he was wrong, so the young man shouldn't bother his head with it. The prince realizes the young lady is perfect, but he's unclear why. At that moment, Nayu interrupts his thoughts, and he asks why the girl is acting as if she will soon be gone, and whether it is because of stress, since he hasn't figured it out yet. At this time, the prince claims that her gaze is always directed somewhere into the distance, after which the two guys are a little surprised. The boy also says that the prince was right, and understands that he spoke to them for the first time. The youth thinks the girl should turn to her friends when the pain subsides, but the magician claims that if they're done relaxing, he has a surprise test for them. Nayu, shocked, then asks if it's really happening again. Well, the man claims that they can handle it if they listen to him carefully, after which the boy turns to Lord Kristen. He also asks if the princess has a close friend to whom she could open up. But at that very moment, they notice how the papers begin to fly apart, and the magician says that he is her best friend. At this time, the boy is wondering if it is really the sun that is shining like that, but it seems to him that it is the color of the eyes. Christina has changed, and the guy at this time claims that this friend is Isaac Belcheraven. At this time, the priest screams at Isaac and also claims that he told him to stop, after which he finally sits down on the floor and cries out that, "Fine, and let the man go and finish him off himself." One of the servants then asks the high priest not to lose his dignity, and Isaac only claims that he is flushed and his voice is about to break, and he has nothing to worry about for the next 10 years, after which the priest says what a scoundrel he is. And he cries out, how can he react differently when a priest is dressed like that? Aizen is a priest. After which he claims that today he is leaving his post and will now become a doctor. After which the man tells the guy to take off his mask, and they immediately grab him. But he screams that he said that he would no longer be a priest. A short time later, he's already sitting there, bound and holding his mask in his teeth. The priest simply asks how he managed to meet such a young man in his old age, after which he also asks how the guy plans to earn a living when he leaves, to which he replies that he will treat people. He's also capable, but the man simply cries out that from what he sees, he has no individuality. The young man replies that he's an adult who can make his own decisions. Well, the priest then claims that their conversation will lead nowhere, and that even if he falls into eternal sleep, the guy will still leave the temple because he is an unbeliever. But the young man then claims that he is working here for now, and the priest says that he thanks him for that. He also wants to ask him for a favor before he leaves, and the princess told him to send her a priest, so let him go. The guy then replies that he hates the imperial palace, and the priest only tells the boy that he thinks it will be right, because Her Highness is the only one who is on the side of the doctors. And didn't the guy say that he was confident in his abilities, so let him come in and establish a relationship with her? After this, the young man only snorts, and the man screams that he should do it only once, because this is the last wish of the old man, who will soon plunge into eternal sleep. After which, he also leaves and says that the guy is acting like God knows what, and he has more divine power than anyone else, and he would have made an excellent high priest. At this time, the young man with blonde hair asks if this is the famous priest Isaac, and why he hates the temple so much. The priest then claims that he will tell the guy next time, to which he answers well, and he will be glad to listen. The prince at this time hands over the test, and understands that it was a little difficult, but he did the best he could. And also, in fact, he thinks that it turned out quite well, and he studied hard. The magician was just asking about what he'd read yesterday. At this moment, Kristen addressed His Highness, and he immediately responds, and the man claims that he looked at his answers and asks if the guy accurately understood the expression that not everything you see is true. The young man replies that the teacher explained it and he thinks he understood. But the man asks if this is true. And has he thought it through? He asks how he thinks and if there's a connection between his mother's immersion in eternal sleep and the rumors about the princess. The young man replies that he was locked up, so he was thinking about something completely different. And Kristen asks if he was thinking about something else and if he were in his place he would think carefully about this. The young man then wonders why the teacher is asking about this at all, and whether this is really part of the test. And he replies that who knows, because suddenly he will understand something that he had not suspected before. At this time, Nayu just closes her eyes with the textbook and realizes that this is happening again. A psychological battle also erupted between Eudice and Kristen. The young man then wondered why they shouldn't do this somewhere else. He also understands that life in the Imperial Palace is not so easy, and he will be on guard. A little while later, the young man turns to His Highness and asks if he agrees that the test was very difficult. To which he replies that yes, the boy understands that he asked more respectfully, which is why he did not answer. The young man also understands that the prince usually ignores him, but he also thinks that he has a brother at home. The prince's sister should leave him too, but he plays the role of their parents who have fallen into eternal sleep and take care of him, and he also has to work a lot. At this moment, the young man also notices someone's gaze on him and asks if something is wrong. He realizes that even the princess's guards are watching him. After which, the guy pushes him, and the boy realizes he's about to burst into tears, but Philip just says the young man has something in his pocket. After which he takes out this thing and says that it is chocolate and also asks where it came from. At this time, Philip is just moving on, and the young man understands that life in the palace is not as easy as he imagined, and the tension increased when Lord Kristen appeared. This guy is determined, but the princess isn't thrilled with it, so he can't even breathe. The guy also thinks the candy is quite tasty. At that moment, someone addresses him, and the young man realizes it's Lord Kristen. She suggests the boy call him Master. And the young man at this time understands that it's not that he doesn't like him, but he has such an expression on his face as if something is tormenting him. After this, the man just hits the boy on the head with a textbook and claims that he looked at his answers, so let him not say that he is only learning what can be useful in life. The guy realizes that he has been exposed, after which he claims that when he leaves the palace, the most he will have to count is the number of slices of bread. The man then tells the boy to stretch his hands, after which he gives him chocolate and the young man rejoices. After which he immediately eats it, and the teacher says that, judging by how many sweets he eats, there is more than just bread in his life. The guy, looking at his teacher, is only frightened and wondering if what he is thinking about is possible. After all, now he sees how the color of the teacher's eyes has changed. After which he immediately runs away, and also understands that he was right. A short time later he's already running and realizes there's nowhere to hide. The young man also considers using the servant's back exit, but at that very moment he collides with someone and falls to the floor. The main character then asks, "Why is Nayu there?" The boy asks why she is there, but then cries out that it doesn't matter, because such things are happening to Lord Kristen. The young lady then asks what's wrong with him, and the boy replies that he's possessed. After that, they sit down on a bench, and the young man cries out that his neighbor told him that the eyes are the mirror of the soul, and since his eye color has changed, it means he is the devil. The main character claims that such a legend actually does exist, and the boy replies that he didn't believe it until he saw it for himself, and it was scary. He also cries out that only the representatives of God and the priests can expel him, but he has never met them. After which the young man suddenly understands what is happening and turns to the princess and apologizes for bothering her with his speculations about the teacher. The girl replies that the guy knows how to smooth things over, and this is a good skill, so the young lady asks if he's really 10 years old. She also asserts that everything is fine. She can also control her feelings, so she won't act rashly. The young man then asks what she's talking about, and the main character just smiles and asks if he's shirking his studies. After which she tells the boy to take her more seriously, to which he agrees and also thinks how stupid he is. At this time, the main character claims that she will not insist, but the classes may be useful. after which she puts candy in his hands, and at this time one of the knights turns to the guy and asks if he is a priest. He replies that yes, he's from the temple, and the princess asked him to come. The main character tells Nayu to go, but the boy wonders if she's waiting for someone. After which she sees a guy who gets angry and asks if the lady will go. The princess replies that she has business. And he says that since the devil did something to Lord Kristen, help might be needed. The young man is a little surprised after this and also thinks how to understand this, but still leaves. And she thinks that although my brother told me to interfere in their affairs, her face still expresses calm. And maybe the girl is settling some problem because she is smiling so inclinably that everything will be resolved soon. And he is confident that the princess will be able to cope with everything, and everything will be as she wishes. At this time, the main character asks if the guy is a priest, Isaac Beltraven. She also claims to be Princess Ophelia Dane Raidani. She also thanks him for accepting her invitation. She also understands that even in the presence of a famous princess, he holds his head high, and she needs to get to know him better. Afterwards, they continue on their way, and the young lady claims that the palace has become noisy due to the activity and that he will only need to check on their health. The young man then asks if she mentioned the children, and the girl then sighs and understands that even if Kristen is up to something, she has already made a final decision on this and she has nothing to worry about. And from this priest, she wants an intoxicating drug. The girl also understands that she has already been plunged into eternal sleep through burning and execution, but she can at least relieve herself of the pain by using a special drug. And in order to get it, she will have to win the trust of this priest, and for this she is ready to do anything, so first she will make a good first impression of herself. And the young lady, looking at this guy, just smiles, putting on a grand show. The girl also understands that he will not leave until she gets what she needs. At this time, the young man asks if the young lady knows him, to which the girl is a little surprised. The guy replies that it's his first time meeting her, and it's strange that she knows his name. The young lady notes that she knows the names of all her guests, and the guy says that, just like the girl, he understands that he is not letting down his guard, and yet. The young lady remembers how in a past life the guy claimed that Her Highness shouldn't sleep with us, and the young lady wondered if this was the end again, and also if the guy was bored. The young man then replied that of course not, and that he was the last piece of her conscience, and that while he was there she was obliged to listen to his nagging. Ophelia also understands that if this guy doesn't make the drug on time, he'll get it in the neck from her. At this time, Isaac asks if this building is the Imperial Palace, and a little while later he approaches the children. He also claims that Sir Yuta is 136 centimeters tall, weighs 32 kilograms, and shows signs of nutritional deficiencies. Nayu is 133 centimeters tall and weighs 30 kilograms, but his bones are a little weak, and they're both smaller than their peers. Yu just realizes at this point that he hadn't even realized it, because Nayu is shorter than him. And the boy realizes at this point that he is the shortest in the city. While the priest then claims that they are in the growth phase, so if they eat well, sleep and exercise, they'll grow up soon. Meanwhile, the main character watches all this and understands that everything is going well, and now all she has to do is ask him to make the drug, after which the young lady turns to Isaac, and she tells him to follow her because she needs to tell him something in person. The young man then asks what this in person is, after which they leave the room, and the prince realizes that the young lady rarely talks to anyone face to face. But the maid then cries out, wondering if he could be her secret lover. The young man is then only surprised. And also wondering what they just said, Isaac is standing next to the young lady at this time, and in shock he asks if she really wants him to prepare poison. The girl replies that it's just an intoxicant and wonders why he called it poison. The guy then remembers how the priest claimed that Her Highness is the only one who takes the doctors, sighed and says that this is how it really is, and they didn't know that poisons were used before the creation of intoxicating drugs. After which the guy turns to Her Highness and states that he will not help her plunge others into eternal sleep, and let her choose something from the methods available to her, and also let her burn them or boil them. Meanwhile, one of the maids claims that rumors are swirling that Princess Mystery is dating a man from the temple. Another maid then asks what Emmy is saying about the preprint. She asks if it's really impossible, since he's probably curious too. The girl also says that someone said that the man was very handsome and had silky hair, so it must be Priest Isaac, since he's from the temple. Nayu, meanwhile, claims this is all very strange. After all, he recently saw the princess and she was going to meet the priest, so the young man asks if she has ever done this. But it was at the back entrance, and the maid immediately cries out that she was right. However, the prince then shouts at her to stop talking like that, and he asks why she is gossiping about the princess's personal life, to which the maid understands that the prince is angry. And the boy at this time turns to Philip and tells him to say at least something, after which the young man asks if he really has to do this. And the prince claims that he is always next to the princess, but she replies that he is not interested in her affairs. And he didn't hear anything from her about marriage, but one maid spoke about it quite loudly. Then someone else comes into the room and asks if they are talking about marriage and if Her Highness said anything about it. The maid claims that she didn't even notice Lord Kristen, while the other one claims that it doesn't have to be that way and that man is there now. The prince at this time is still in shock from the fact that Her Highness will get married, and the man says what interesting topics for conversation they have. After which he claims that they probably just get along well and also asks where the girl is now. He also approaches Philip and asks if he knows where Her Highness went with her lover. Philip then replied that he thought Her Highness and the priest had gone into the garden. Well, one of the maids asked if he really wanted to interrupt them. At this time, the man understands that previously the gossip about her lover existed solely for political reasons, but why did they suddenly start talking about the priest? And did the girl really fall in love with him, after which the guy comes closer and sees these two? At this time, the guy says that this poison is different from those that the aristocrats know about. And he also has no idea how to make it, but the young lady says that she thinks he didn't understand her. And she needs this poison not to plunge into eternal sleep, but at that very moment the magician runs up to them. He also covers the young lady and asks for forgiveness. The main character is then a little surprised and also asks why he is there and also thinks why he has so much anger in his eyes. The guy simply tells the young man to obey Her Highness's orders, and if she told him to make poison, then let him do so. The main character wonders if they really know each other, and Kristen just grabs her hand and tells Her Highness that they can go, and if she needs poison, he will prepare it himself. However, the young lady then pulls her hand away, to which the guy is surprised, and the main character does not understand what he is thinking about. At this time, the young man asks what happened, and the main character asks if he knows Isaac and why he has already taken it upon himself to speak for her. The girl also understands that her old bruise still hurts and also claims that the guy is a talented person, but this does not give him the right to test her limited patience. The young man then says that no, and he didn't mean it that way, but the young lady understands what about the eyes. She's curious if he's returned to time, not believing his eyes never changed color in his past life. But in this life, he suddenly and unprovoked showed up at her place. The change in eye color proves he's returned in time and decided to get closer to her, since he remembers everything. Well, after this, the girl only asserts that she will go to the palace and they can talk another time, to which the priest agrees, and the Lord asks Her Highness to wait and asks when the next time will come. He also asks why he should wait for the young lady, and the girl understands that if this is a sign of returning in time, then why don't her eyes change color? Or the girl asks if he really wants to hear the answer. A few days later, Philip is already claiming that Christine seems desperate. And the main character asks what's wrong with Togo. After all, it doesn't concern her. Their girlfriend is wondering if the guy thinks that she enjoys talking to him like that. But before, they shared everything with each other. The guy also claims that rumors continue to spread, and the main character realizes that she was returning to herself. Suddenly, she heard crying and went to look, and she thinks that it was because of this situation that the gossip started. The blonde man then asked the girl to talk to him for a bit. And now the young lady is asking what all the rumors are about. To which the young man replies that they cannot know whether they touched him, but she asks to stay closer to the teacher and not to the priest, and the main character asks why and what does Isaac have to do with it. After which she also gets up from the table and states that, in any case, she does not want to talk to Kristen and that he should learn the rules of chess because it is no good. At this time, someone approaches Her Highness and states that he would like to see her. The girl understands that it is Kristen and also thinks how stubborn he is, although she knew about it. The girl also turns to Philip and tells him something but realizes he's already left. She also thinks she doesn't want to date Kristen now because it will ruin her plan, not because he betrayed her in her first life. She also finds it unpleasant to see him acting as if nothing happened. The guy, meanwhile, claims he came to apologize. The main character then asks if he really wants to apologize, to which he replies that yes. And so he asks to be let in. Then the young man comes and claims that he is ashamed of his actions, and he knows it may sound strange, but he himself does not understand his feelings. To be honest, he's overly arrogant and would always like to be her closest subordinate. Ophelia then asks if he's sure, to which the guy replies that yes, and that's why he came to apologize, and also doesn't understand where such a strong desire comes from. Pushing him to help her, and he wants to devote himself entirely to her, well, she already has a close subordinate. The young lady then wonders if he's actually right, and what's he talking about. The guy insists he'll stay where he is and won't do anything else, so he asks the lady to accept his apology. But the main character realizes this sounds strange and asks if he really means he'll stop trying to get closer to her. The young man replies that he'd rather lie right now. But no, he won't be able to keep his promise, after which he asks if this makes her angry. The main character then becomes shocked and tells the guy that Assad also often scolds him and says that he shouldn't act like a child. The young lady then realizes that this guy's face reflects embarrassment, and when they first met, he was the best magician in the empire, and she also considered him too mature for his age, and now the young lady is just trying to hold back her laughter. She also wonders if Assad was scolding Kristen for acting like a child. After which the young lady claims she's not laughing. The man realizes she seems to have relaxed, then claims he is. At this point, the young lady realizes she doesn't know how to overcome this storm of emotions. She also claims she's curious about how a boy scolds a boy, but she's still angry at him. The boy then just sighs and says no, and since the princess is laughing, that means she's no longer angry. The girl also thinks it's possible that he cries every night. Meanwhile, Isaac sits on the other side of the bushes, after which he notices Emmy and Philip, and the maid tells him that this is a great job. At this time, the main character, looking at the guy's face, realizes that she has just found out what he really is. However, it is worth ending with sentimentality, after which the girl tells him to keep the line, because she is a princess and he is only the prince's mentor. After which the young man claims that he will try, and the young lady claims that then she will go, and it seems that the ENT has not been feeling well lately, so let him monitor his condition. The guy then bows and thanks the princess for her concern, and then the girl leaves. At this time, the magician turns to the guy and says that he can go out and calls him the princess's lover, after which she tells him not to hide there like a rat. The young man wonders if he's really just been called a lover and a rat. And she's also wondering what the man is saying now. A little while later, one of the maids asks if they've heard the news. And the other one replies that of course they heard, and that this was, after all, a fierce battle that was fearlessly waged in the imperial palace for just one single flower. At this time, another asks if they mean that the lord and the priest fought in the rose garden because of Her Majesty. And then someone asks who won, and another maid claims that the battle is between a magician and a priest. Isn't it obvious? After all, the lord, using magic elegantly, knocked the priest off his feet as she heard. But another girl claims that everything was a little different, because she possessed the fighting skills received from the knight commander, Lord Assad. He knocked Priest Isaac down. Another one asks what difference it makes what he used to defeat him. And then they all admire Kristen. Philip turns to the young lady and claims that the teacher is quite popular. Well, the main character just thinks that they are walking around spreading rumors and wondering if life really seemed so easy to them. And the girl wonders if she should burden them even more so that there is no time left even for sleep. At this time, Philip claims that he does not know what the lady is thinking, but this is unacceptable. But he asks where she is heading, to which the girl replies that she will go to the priest to finish that conversation about the intoxicating drug. After which the young lady goes into the library, and when she sees a guy there, she claims that she thought it was just rumors. But he still wonders if Lord Kristen really beat him. The young man then asks if he looks human, who waves his fists without reason, and the young lady understands that if she remembers her past life, then it's quite possible. After which the guy replies that they didn't fight and he doesn't waste time on useless things. After which the young lady says that it's true, and even if he didn't avoid a fight, he wouldn't have struck first. The guy is wondering what she's talking about, and the girl says she knows him well. However, he insists they had a conversation with the magician. The young man also recalls how the man said that the princess's lover could come out and not hide there like a rat. He also claimed that what the princess was asking to prepare was not poison, and she was not one to beat around the bush. And he doesn't know the reason, but she really wants to get the intoxicating drug, and he also apologizes to him. After which, the guy grabs Isaac by the clothes, and one of the maids in shock asks if they are really fighting over the princess. Kristen claims that he was rude to the princess's guest and asks for forgiveness, after which he shook the guy's hand. And now the priest claims he's a selfish man. But he defended the princess and apologized for the sake of Her Majesty and if she really is the villain of the century, as rumors say. Could there possibly be a person who cares about her so much? After which the young man asks if she really wants an intoxicating drug. The girl is then a little surprised and also claims that all she wants is an intoxicating drug. Well, to be more precise, it's a painkiller, and you need a drug that will make you feel nothing when you eat or take medication. It is necessary for illegal operations carried out by doctors. But she heard that it is not used in practice because only priests can conduct research, and his erroneous opinion was formed due to problems with those who wanted poison. At this time, the guy also thinks that this woman knows doctors so well, and he knows people who pretend to understand their doctor well, especially the aristocrats of the palace, and they were very good at changing the attitude as it suited them. Well, the young man still thinks how he can trust this man, after which the young lady just grabs his hand. She also tells the boy to believe the words of the empire's only princess. After which, the boy realizes that the princess is the villain of the century, the poisonous spider of the imperial palace. After which, the young man asks why she needs painkillers, and the girl only answers that she wanted to escape pain, and no one liked to feel it. The guy, shocked, realized that these were truly eyes that wanted to escape pain. Like those who suffer from illness sitting in front of the temple and praying for God's mercy, such pretense is impossible. The guy at this time claims that he would like to ask if he will fall for her words, but he has enough courage and believe in her. After which, the young man asks to prepare a laboratory and materials for the development of a painkiller. And the main character smiles, after which the young man asserts that it is necessary to deliver the mandrake root that exists in the West and is 20 years old, and so on. The main character claims that she will find everything, and asks if it is really necessary. At this time, Philip is watching them and is only angry, and the main character asks if it wasn't a battle with Kristen, then why does his face look so crumpled? The guy then realizes that he's discovered rare medicinal herbs in the garden of the imperial palace, and he stole a lot of imperial property. After which the main character claims that now that they are in the same boat, he can tell her. At this time, Nayu only addresses Philip and also removes the blanket from him and claims that the clothes are here, and let him get breakfast from his sister Emmy on the way out. The boy also said that he was late too, and asked if he could wake him up on time. The young man also claimed that he behaved exactly the same as his brother now and that he was wrong to be scared of him at first. After which the young man immediately runs out of the room and claims that he will go first, and Philip understands what he must definitely tell the princess today. A little while later, the boy approaches her. The main character asks if he really means that she needs to increase security. The guy replies that Her Highness must not have thought about it, and the main character asks what happened to Togo. After which the young man asserts that for her own safety, she should keep a strong man like Kristen near her, and not a weakling like the priest. The young lady then just gets furious and thinks what a klutz the guy is, and for some reason it seemed to her that he wanted to tie her up with Kristen. But he should have at least half the ingenuity of his younger brother, after which the young lady lies menacingly and turns to Philip, and asks if he remembers the trap the rabbits jumped out of in the garden. The guy replies that of course he remembers. And he also started a conversation about this, because the girl has not yet caught the one who wants to harm her, and the young lady claims that he too was at the very bottom and must know. Well, although it looks ridiculous, however, this is large-scale magic that requires special conditions. After which the young lady asks him how he thinks and how many people could use her, and then he starts doing the math in his head. And then the realization comes to him, and the main character claims that he thought of it too late. After this, the guy, shocked, asks why she invited such a person to the palace, and the girl replies that she should go to the lab. After which she comes there and asks how Isaac is doing in the lab, and if he is happy. The girl then thinks that she is great, and claims that the additional materials he requested are already there. After which she also asks what the guy is looking for there, and he answers that he is looking for her bodyguard, and his name seems to be Philip. The young lady then claims he's not a bodyguard, but a servant, but the guy insists that as soon as Her Highness comes and goes. Then he immediately appears and displays unceremonious behavior as if he wants to kick him out of there, and he is going to take action if he sees him today. The main character then asks what measures will be taken, after which the guy says that he will throw him out, and the young lady only smiles. After which she claims that she slightly exaggerated the fact that Philip is her guard and that this is not at all necessary. And the priest at this time says that although this guy irritates him, it is surprising that he acts with a cap for the sake of Her Highness, and it is not easy to win the people's order, so she did a great job. The young lady then claims that the priest has a very positive outlook on the world and wonders if he is like the high priest. The young man then claims that this cannot be, and he does not at all think that she has no ulterior motives. He just doesn't know why the princess speaks as if she doesn't deserve anyone's protection. However, many people voluntarily act for the good of the princess, and this is what he sees. After which there is silence between them, and a little while later the girl returns back. After which she suddenly sees Philip and turns to him and also states what she thought. He says he'll be bothering Kristen all day, but does he really have any other business with Isaac? The guy replies no. He also heard that the lady had gone to the laboratory and came to accompany her, but in any case, she went alone. The young lady then wondered if there was any danger in the palace. She also asks if he really cares about her safety and if he has forgotten about their agreement. The guy replies that he must end her life and knows about it, but until that moment she must be safe. Nayu, who is under the protection of the princess, will be unhappy, and he is ashamed to say it. But for the first time he saw him so joyful in this place, and the princess gives him what he could not give. The main character then understands why the guy is so worried about her, and if she is gone, then her life will be the same as it is now. Well, the young man then turns to her and claims that he heard that it was her order to place him in the same room as Naya. The girl then wonders if the guy has transformed into his real form, but he only gets down on one knee, after which he takes the girl's hand in his own, kisses it, and thanks her. The guy also claims he meant to say those words in her true form without magic, after which the main character says no, and then she looks at him and says that his clothes are too small. The young man immediately stands up and also claims that his clothes have become too small. So he goes and tidies her up. The young lady then says that's true, and it looks quite sloppy. The girl also understands that his love for his younger brother has not gone anywhere, and it is good that she settled them together, because she almost neglected the prince's protection because she was worried about Nayu. But next time you need to say that she also has a motive, so there is no need to be so grateful. But then the young lady notices something, and she sees that a priest is looking out of the window, after which she can wish him good night. But the young lady also thinks that if it were causeless mercy, it would look exactly like this. At this time, the young man, standing around the corner, looks at the girl, after which he turns around and becomes embarrassed. At this time, Shayna washes the master and claims that recently, it seems he's become closer to the princess. The boy claims that she herself said that until he becomes strong, who should please her highness? The woman replies that this is true, but let the guy not forget that Ophelia is the enemy who deprived him of his mother. The young man then replies that he did say that he knew, and that he needed to cruelly plunge her into eternal sleep and also take revenge for this. But now, he also remembers the face of the young lady when he gave her flowers and thinks what to do. Meanwhile, the main character asks someone if he's talking about marriage. The Duke then claims that it seems Her Highness has recently become interested in friendships with men, and he's simply trying to find someone of the right age. The young lady then claims that rumors have been circulating about them in the palace lately, and she asks if the Duke is going there too, but it seems he was busy for several days. And he probably had a hand in this himself, after which the young lady asks if he wants her to get married. The man then asks if it wasn't she who provoked all of this, and the young lady understands that now the empire is being torn in two. And these are the main forces serving Her Majesty, as well as a new faction supporting Prince Eudes. If the prince had continued to be locked in the tower, such problems would not have arisen, and this illegitimate child could not be released. The young lady asks if the Duke is aware of this, that these words are tantamount to treason, and no matter what position he occupies, he cannot speak like that. However, the man only shouts at the young lady, calling her by her full first and last name. The girl understands that one of the few people who can be forgiven for calling the name Ophelia is Duke Sarkart, after which the young lady says yes, and the man only says that through marriage one can increase one's power. She also claims to be the next empress. The girl understands that after entering eternal sleep, the empress is in the hands of the emperor. The only one defending Ophelia was a representative of the princess's faction. The man, meanwhile, wondered if she would want the empire taken away from her by this passport. And he cannot close his eyes to this, and marriage is a good option for gaining power. The girl understands that soft governance is not in her interests, but nevertheless, she must definitely seize this chance. The battle between the princess and prince factions that takes place behind the throne is important. At this time, the man only hugs the young lady and claims that her downside is that she looks like her mother. And it causes a lot of misunderstandings, but she needs to gain more supporters. The main character then wonders why he's suddenly acting like this. At this point, the man simply takes handcuffs out of his pocket and then chains the young lady to the table. The girl then comes into shock and thinks about what just happened and turns to the Duke and is also interested. Did he really just tie her to the table, after which the man only smiles and the young lady screams for them to wait a second? And she wonders where they are taking her, but the man only says that this way she will go to the groom's viewing, and it seems she did not want this, so they will have to send her away by force. A little while later, she is already seated on a chair, and the man tells the girl not to worry about the children. They have prepared a sufficiently healthy partner to produce an heir. The young lady understands that this old man does not know what shame is, and the Duke will never back down. But whoever comes, she will fight, after which someone tells the lady to wait there, but the girl just thinks what kind of bad feeling this is, and she also hopes that it is not a magician. The young lady then states that if it comes to that, then let it be anyone but Lord Kristen. The young man is behind her at this time and is surprised, and when the young lady turns around, she sees him there. The guy just smiles and also claims that he too was looking forward to this precious meeting with Her Highness the Princess. The prince is training with a sword at this time, and his friend claims that this is too much. And how can you do the swings 100 times? Teacher Assad isn't there anyway. Eudes just tells the boy to stop complaining. And if he doesn't want to, then let him return home, and he asks if at least his parents know that he is there. Nayu realizes that the prince is rude to him every day, after which he asks what other parents he has. After all, he only has a brother, and he's rarely home. But he asks if this is true and also realizes that this boy seems close to his brother. The young man also thinks about his relationship with the princess and remembers what he was told. The girl claimed that all of his mother's things and portraits and even clothes and jewelry needed to be burned, because why keep something that was not alive? At this time, he claims that the prince is lucky because he has been a valuable person since birth and must have grown up spoiled. And in the alley where he lived, there was a man who painted portraits. And it's amazing that he could paint a portrait from memory without actually seeing the other person. But His Highness must have many portraits of his mother, after which the boy only claims that he also does not have a portrait. The young man then asks if they are not lying in his tower, and the prince replies that he is telling the truth and he does not have these portraits. Nayu asks if the tower is an extension of the palace, but it seems he has many family memories there with Her Highness. After which the young man says how good the boy is and envies the prince's life. The young man only gets angry after this, but he still lowers his sword and turns to Nai, asking if he said that this guy draws portraits from memory. The boy then asks what this prince is talking about, and he claims that he just said that there was an artist in that alley, to which Nayu replies that yes. After which, the prince says that they must go, and the young man asks if he really wants to see the artist. But he doesn't have money and it seems very expensive, but the prince asks if it's really that impossible. Nayu claims that he doesn't know, and that if he steals precious jewelry from the imperial palace, it might work. Meanwhile, someone sits silently in a tree near them. The main character sits at the table, and she claims that she is fed up, because is it really Lord Kristen again, and didn't she recently warn him? The girl claims that she means that she would like to see his face less often, but the guy only tells the princess that yes, and she said something similar. However, the Erhard family are prosperous aristocrats, and should be able to refuse Duke Sarkat's offer. The protagonist is only angered by this. The young man claims that the marriage proposal actually came to his eldest son first. But he only became embarrassed and asked if he really had to go to see Her Highness the Princess. Because of the stress, he got sick and the guy asks what he had to do, because he had to go to him, to which the young lady says that it is understandable, but then in shock she thinks, is it really the Lord who got sick? Because then who are the boys training with now? The Lord at this time only gets down on one knee and states that before they start talking. He asks for forgiveness, after which he lifts the hem of the young lady's dress, and the main character becomes a little embarrassed. And the guy just says how rude this is, because even if this man is a duke, how can he reforge a princess? Then he breaks this chain and the young lady realizes that this guy's abilities are truly incredible. The chain explosion didn't even damage her. The guy insists they can now have a more comfortable conversation. But the young lady just goes somewhere and claims that she is grateful to him but does not intend to marry the Lord, so he asks her to ask. The guy immediately falls and grabs her by the leg, and also screams to Her Highness that no, he didn't come expecting anything, but offers her at least a cup of tea. The main character then says that the Lord is so clingy and let him drink tea alone, because she needs to check something. The guy then says that she is cruel only towards him, and since that is the case, let him quickly promise her one thing. After which the young man asserts that if a dispute arises about who will be the next emperor, the Erhard family will fully support it. After this, the main character thinks how stupid all this is, because the prince is still a child, and now he himself is not burning with a desire to become an emperor. However, the forces of the followers act as they please, and selfishly arrange betrayals, setting up the person they themselves have chosen. As a result of their actions, the chosen person was sent to the guillotine, just like she had been in her past life. At this time, the guy claims that he will repeat that he wants to give everything to the princess, and if this is not love, then what is it? So he claims to ask, but the young lady at the same time screams out to Philip and Emmy. The two immediately jump out of the bushes, and the young lady asks what Youth is doing now. Philip replies that he is giving fencing lessons to Lord Assad as usual, but because he is ill, the prince makes 100 swings with his wooden finger sword. The main character then asks if there is anyone around him in this case, and since they are there, let them go and check properly. The magician at this time turns to the princess and asks what about his question, and then says that you are the only one, because he is always behind, and she said to go check on the prince, so he is wondering if something happened that might bother her. The girl claims the kidnapping is urgent and also understands that even if the guy was recently locked in the tower, the prince remains a prince, and without supervision, he can become easy prey for someone as a man of noble blood. Such a big deal as a kidnapping is unlikely to happen in the palace, but if it happens outside the palace, it is easy to attract it with the help of a break, and if there is a person desperate enough to pass Yuta on to those who will use it as they see fit, Nayu puts on her cloak. He also claims that if you do this, you can easily leave the imperial palace, to which the young man claims that he once went to watch the festival with Her Highness the Princess. Nayu realizes that he really stole the palace jewels, and this is enough for Nao's brother to not work for the rest of his life. Meanwhile, the prince turns to the boy and asks why he's standing there, then suggests they hurry up, since he wasn't lying about the artist. The young man replies that of course, and why would he lie? He then asks the boy to wait, as he'll ask the people. Then the boy runs up to one man and says something to him and points to the prince. After which the two of them look at him with a grin, and Yuta senses something is wrong. The boy points to a tent, and he tells Mr. Yuta that they need to go there and that this is the place he was talking about. After that, they go into some alley, and the young man understands that even in the tower it was not so dirty, and his friend claims that it looks like the place where he lived, so it was easy to find him. At this time, the prince wonders if the guy really lived in such a place, and he only asks if it looks a little shabby, after which he asserts that he will go in first. And Yuta tells him to wait, and when he also wants to go into the tent, he realizes that it seems those people are watching them. He has a strange premonition, after which the young man turns to Nai and shouts at him not to go alone. The young man then moves on and asks where his friend is. But then he is suddenly blinded by some light, and the young man is a little surprised, and at that time the person who is there. He turns to his dear guest and asks if he's come to such a place. The prince then wonders if this man really is an artist, and claims he's heard he can paint portraits, and asks if that's true. The artist simply tells the young man to close his eyes and remember the person he misses, and the young man then thinks whether everything will be okay, after which he closes his eyes. He also tries to remember his mother. The boy remembers running to her and hugging her, but then he starts seeing a princess, who looks at his mother with disgust, after which the artist turns to the dear guest and tells him to concentrate and remember his mother. After all, the crystal ball continues to show another person, after which the young man still tries to think about his mother, but he realizes that even when remembering her, only minor moments come to mind. And no matter how hard he tries, instead of memories of his mother, the first thing that comes to mind is Her Highness's smile, and when the emperor fell ill, it was she who locked him up in the tower. That's why he thinks why she then asked if he wanted to get out of there, and now the young man understands that he should stop thinking about the princess because someday he will need to take revenge on her, and now he needs to remember his mother's face. But all he remembers is how someone told him that Lady Sitara herself plunged herself into eternal sleep by drinking poison. At this time, one muscular man screams out how much longer he must wait and says that this boy should be grabbed right now. The prince then asks Naya in shock what happened, and he only screams what fucking bastards these guys are. He also shouts for the prince to run, because these people are planning to kidnap him. The boy asks if they really want him, but the boy insists that they hid behind the tent and grabbed him, and these people are dangerous, so he should run quickly. At this time, one man tells Naya that he will take care of him, and the prince then realizes in shock that this is the same man who is exploiting Naya. At this time, someone tells him not to worry, because they are not going to raise their hand on principle, let him just obediently follow them. However, the young man then only lifts the stick and realizes that there are about 4 enemies there, and he also wondered if he could defeat them alone. The young man also understands that no one will save him now, and not only now, but also the people who are for him. After which the image of the princess appears in the ball, and the artist is a little surprised, and one of the bandits screams, "Are the little prince really brave enough to attack him?" But they actually came to escort him. But at that very moment, someone hits this guy from behind, and it turns out to be a priest. The prince then asks in shock if it is really him, and the man only asks if this bandit says that he came to escort the prince. He also thinks whether he shouldn't have hit, after which the prince cries out that no and thanks him for coming. The guy claims that while sitting at the top of a tree, he saw two children walking outside the castle, after which he also tears the sleeve of his clothes and also claims that it turned out that they were unaccompanied, and he doesn't think that walking alone is right, so he followed them. One of the bandits then throws Naya and then heads towards Isaac, who has already wrapped his fist in clothes. And he also claims that this guy should understand the difference in weight categories before he starts picking fights. He also hits the young man in the face, and he then gets angry and hits the guy right in the stomach. Where is his weak spot? Meanwhile, Nayu just throws everything he can at the other bandits and tells them to get out of there. The boy also turns to the gentleman and tells him to pick the right moment and run, but he only screams and asks if the guy should press him alone. Isaac claims that even if they escape, they will still be caught immediately, and there are about 10 of them there. The prince then asks if there are really 10 people there, since he only sees 4, but the guy claims that this is not the issue. He was simply wondering how long it would take to find them and how to do it as simply as possible. Meanwhile, Now was following the tracks, and the main character asks Philip what happened to the prince, but he notes that it seems he went beyond the castle. The main character asks if he can track it, to which the guy says that if she just orders it, he will definitely bring it back to him. The guy also tells Her Highness that it is safe to stay in the palace, but the note only states that he will go personally and let Emmy prepare for departure. The boy then only wants to reiterate that the castle is safe, and the mage merely pats him on the shoulder. Ophelia also understands that youth is now with Nayu, but it doesn't seem like the prince was thinking about leaving the castle alone. She wouldn't want to think so, but she still wonders if Yuta sold Naya. She also wonders if he's planning to save up money for a life with Now. At this time, the magician asks if the lady is worried about the prince, and she replies that the prince of the empire has disappeared, so he should also worry. The guy at this time approaches her closer and whispers to her that he is worried about why such a precious person of the empire is dragging an assassin with her. The young man also claims that he has recently wanted to ask this question, and the girl changed his appearance with the help of a magic ring. So he asks what is the reason for keeping this assassin with him. And besides, there's power in that ring. However, Philip interrupts him at this point and cries out that they've arrived and that the trail leads to this place, after which the young man immediately rushes into the tent and cries out to Nai and the prince. The main character then tells the young man to wait and not act rashly, but he only cries out whether they are okay, and also he came for them, so let them not worry. The prince at this time only cries out to Philip and also claims that he is very late, after which the man sees the boy with the priest, who claims that Isaac dealt with everyone terribly. At this time, the guy claims that if you know the theory, you can easily figure everything out, and he says it's as easy as someone who studied the human body, and everyone has a weak spot, and it's enough to simply hit it. At this point, the artist turns to the boy and asks if he can heal his wounds with magic, but he replies that it is not necessary, and he was able to endure thanks to the fact that the artist protected the prince, and he is a good magician. And he must have had a hard time, because those scoundrels were hiding in his tent. So Philip then asks if they were hiding, and then goes on to attack the artist. And they claim that they weren't hiding, but rather were being hidden. After all, it is impossible to hide in such a narrow tent, even if they could. It is rather absurd that the poppy did not notice the existence of so many people, and they worked as a team. At this time, the artist asks if he is talking about the team, and this cannot be done. After which a blue flame begins to burn, and the prince at this time thinks whether it has really gotten dark again, like at the beginning when he entered the tent. At this time, the boy also hears the sound of a bell, and Poppy points to the pendant and also claims that they only accidentally acted together, and that he and they have different goals and methods. After which the magician also tells the prince that, as they agreed, he finished the portrait of his mother, and therefore he must pay in return. The main character then heads inside the tent and realizes that she definitely saw Philip enter there, but there is no one there, and the girl asks if there is a secret passage there. The man realizes a magical barrier has been erected there. The heroine then cries out for the knights to comb the area and check for a hidden place or passage. However, the magician understands that this is useless because if they are not magicians, they will not be able to detect the barrier, and the girl could not initially guess about the existence of the barrier. After which the guy imagines how he will claim that this is a magical barrier, and also understands that he must speak out. He also imagines how the princess will say that, as expected from the best magician in the empire, he is a truly reliable person, and the guy will claim that this is because he is the next owner of the magic tower. And now the young man tries to contain his bright smile, after which he tells Her Highness that he wants to say that this is a phenomenon. However, the main character claims that this is a magical barrier, after which the guy is a little surprised and the girl claims that they immediately followed Philip, but he suddenly disappeared, and there was too little time to physically move to another space. And of course it could be a trick, but in a situation where so many people can't notice anything, it means that a magical barrier is more suitable. The magician then claims that if she assumed that this was a magical barrier, then why did she order him to look for a secret passage? But the girl only asks if he knows what kind of noise the soldiers would make if they saw magic for the first time. Only the mage can answer her guess, after which she asks if it really is a magical barrier. Meanwhile, the young man wonders how the girl ever guessed how talented she is. After which the young man tells Her Highness that she is right, and the main character asserts that in this case, there is only one thing that Kristen must do. The artist at this time claims that she made a deal with the prince and is not in league with those bandits. His comrades are also fine, and the artist only smiles and also claims that he can plunge them into eternal sleep with magic. The young man, meanwhile, cries out what she wants from him, and the artist offers to exchange the portrait for the ring his servant wears. The young man then wonders if she's talking about Philip's ring, and remembers how he claimed that Philip was wearing a beautiful ring and wondered if it was from his girlfriend, but the guy only claimed that the princess gave it to him. After which the young man claims that this is a gift from Her Highness the Princess for Philip, and also this is not an item that he can give away at his own discretion. But at that very moment the artist lifts the guy into the air and he is a little surprised, after which he screams for him to stop, and the artist only says how strange it is that the Prince of Obedient People follows Her Highness, and isn't she his sworn enemy? The girl then just smirks and claims that it was fun to look into his memories through the crystal ball, and she also wants to open his head. At this time, the young man screams that this is simply terrible, but at the same moment the magical barrier dissipates, and it turns out that it is the main character who cuts it with a sword, and the magician helps her. After which the magical barrier is destroyed, and Kristen claims that, as she asked, he is weakening the barrier, and that she should simply apply more force. Then the main character sees the artist holding a boy in his arms, and there is something black on his face. The main character then asks what he is doing with the prince, and the woman wonders if their relationship shouldn't get worse, so to bring his mind to order, she put a small bomb in his head, or rather, she planted a gift there. And in any case, a lot of people came, and it would be foolish to resist the elite soldiers of the imperial family, as well as the next owner of the magic tower, so she will simply retreat. At this time, the main character asks the woman if she thinks she will let her go so easily, but she just throws the prince, and the young lady immediately throws her ball, and the young man grabs them. And the artist then says that they will still see the bald, beautiful princess, because they will meet again soon. A little while later, the young lady is already sitting with the guy, and the priest claims that he did not know that there were more magicians like Lord Kristen in the Empire, but he's nonetheless glad the prince is saved. The main character, meanwhile, only addresses Isaac, and he also thanks him, to which the young man is a little surprised and also thinks why this is suddenly happening, and says that there is nothing to thank him for. A little while later, the prince apologizes to Her Highness for secretly leaving the palace, but the girl claims that she already said that everything is fine. She also wonders if this is the first time the guy has gotten close to someone his own age, and it must have been fun like a dream, since this is the first time he has been deceived. At this time, the young man is just in shock, wondering if he was deceived, and it seems the girl still doesn't know about her mother's portrait, after which he tells her to listen and asks not to punish Naya too much. The main character then says that they will see what to do, and then tells the boy to join because his evil mentors must have given him a lot of homework, to which he agrees. And the young lady then hands him the pendant and claims that it seems to be his, after which the young man is a little surprised. But when he looks in that direction, he realizes that this is a portrait of his mother, and the girl claims that she found it in the artist's tent and that it is a precious item for him, so he should have it. The boy then only thanks her for not throwing him away and taking him with her, to which the young lady agrees and also states that she is busy, so let him go faster. The young man then thanks her again and also claims that he is truly very grateful to many people. The ice tells him to stop, and the boy says that he will go. Meanwhile, someone else addresses Her Highness the Princess and asks if she shouldn't be ashamed, since she could have been more honest with the boy. The message then claims that the prince would have been even happier then, and the main character, shocked, asks what they were doing together. She also screams that she is asking for forgiveness, but claims that everything is not so, and the magician thinks that she is really cute. At this time, the girl turns to Lord Kristen and tells him to report his observations regarding the prince, after which he agrees. He also claims that the boy seemed full of thoughts, but the flow of magical power inside the body was normal. The priest claims that the same applies to his holy power, as only minor flaws were discovered. The main character then wonders if it's true that their artist claimed to have planted a bomb in his head. Kristen at this time understands that the time has come for excellent magic spells, and at least now he must. But the main character at this time asks if in this case it is really mental magic, and the man understands that this is the answer. The girl also claims that this does not look like brainwashing, so it could just be hallucinations or an injection, but fortunately this is only temporary and mental type magic is very words. At this time, Kristen only cries out to Her Highness that, in fact, he is the best magician there, and why is she untangling everything alone, and also, when did she manage to conduct the research? The girl claims that since she became the princess of the empire, she should at least know this, and she wants to conduct research, so let Isaac give her more magic books. Well, the young man then claims that he does not want to, because he thinks that Her Highness needs rest. After this, the main character only becomes embarrassed and turns to Isaac, who claims that the temperature is a little high. At this time, Kristen is watching these two, and the priest claims that in order to relieve fatigue, you need to drink tea prepared by the priest, and the young lady is wondering if it is really the same as the one they were in the temple, because if so, then it is not necessary. Kristen tells Her Highness that symptoms such as fatigue can be easily removed with his magic, but the young lady only becomes frightened and claims that for some reason she feels it is dangerous. The man claims that this is a form of his passionate feelings towards the princess, and the main character says no, and that he should display them in a slightly less threatening manner. But when the man brings these balls closer to her, the main character wonders if this magic doesn't work on the princess. The two boys are also shocked, while the prince falls asleep under a tree. At that moment, Nayu addresses him and bows. He also claims that he heard that His Highness covered for him, so he is very grateful to him. The young man then replies that no, and that it was he who had planned to leave the palace. Meanwhile, Nayu is lost in thought, and the young man insists that much was reflected in their crystal ball that day. Nayu then only screams for the guy to forgive him for rummaging up the prince's past, and maybe it's because of his envy, but the young man then only grabs his head, and Nayu asks if he has pain somewhere. The boy replies that after returning from the artist, he sometimes hears a voice in his head and hears someone saying that if the price is her life, then she will give it up. Only let the lady spare Yuta. The guy also thinks why he hears something like this, and the woman at this time claims that this is a request, and the guy understands that even without these voices, he's sufficient. The young man asks if His Highness is truly all right, and if he'll call someone right away. But at the same time, a priest turns to him, and Nayu is then a little excited and says that he is just in time, and a similar principle somewhere it hurts, and he says that he hears voices. And in his thoughts, he adds that this could be a hallucination or an introduction, and the priest claims that everything will be fine, judging by the words of the princess. He also claims it's a special tea prepared with the temple, and that it relieves fatigue. The guy also says he made it for His Highness the Prince, but he wants to refuse, but the priest insists he drink it. But the princess says that she refuses unless he first takes care of the prince. The young man is a little surprised after this and asks if the princess is worried about him. But at that very moment, the woman's voice sounds in his head again, asking Her Highness to at least give Yetta a child. The young man also understands that even without these voices in his head, he already hates the princess very, very much. At this time, the priest asks if the gentleman is really crying. The boy wonders why the princess always does things to make him stop hating her, but in the end, he cannot hate Her Highness. Meanwhile, the main character burns her tongue slightly with tea. Meanwhile, the artist is quite surprised. And she also wonders if the guy dispelled the magic earlier than she thought, and his mixed feelings return to normal. As expected, the prince's follower was responsible for the kidnapping of the prince himself, and even if it was Nayu, it looked like he wanted to sell the prince. But he's Naya, and even if the boy accidentally put the prince in danger, Philip is relying on Her Highness's generosity at this time. She also asks her for a light punishment for Nayu. The main character realizes that this guy has come there again, and one of the maids immediately hits him with a towel and asks how he dares to go there when Her Highness is changing her outfit, but the young man only happens with the Greeks, and it would be better if they put him into eternal sleep. The main character then thinks that maybe it's worth making fun of him, after which she asks if he is trying to spare his blood from punishment after he committed such a disgusting sin. The guy then claims that he is still a child, so it is harsh, although not, and he screams that he will take the punishment instead of him. And he'll give up anything, just let her spare Naya. The girl then asks if he's really willing to bet everything on this. After which she takes out her comb and throws it on the floor and tells the guy to clean it. The young man then asks in shock if it is really enough for him to just clean this comb, because he will clean it until it shines, but the main character shakes her head. And the guy says that then he can just sweep everything and clean out the dressing room with a comb, after which the girl also shakes her head. And the young man wonders if he should clean the garden too, after which the young lady smears it again, and the guy asks if she really wants to clean this entire castle, after which the young lady says that's exactly it and laughs. So the matter with the artist was concluded, and now she thinks about how calmly things are. Just like the spell cast on Eudice, various disturbing things were happening. The boy then claimed that now he did not feel a headache and did not hear voices, and the girl understood that it all resolved itself, and it was strange that the artist was aiming at the ring that she gave Philip. The main character also thinks about why the artist needed this ring and looks at the young man who is covered in foam and cleaning the entire castle with a comb. The girl realizes he's currently on one of the towers, and the boy's brother tells Her Highness he could fall. The prince says he certainly doesn't know what Philip did wrong, but perhaps she'll forgive him. The main character realizes that she thought she would take pity on him if he pretended to clean normally, but now she's wondering what kind of madness he's doing. The prince then tells Her Highness that Philip is his precious friend, and he is afraid that he might be harmed. The main character understands that there was certainly something good in this, and Eudice opened his soul more to her, but the girl thinks that maybe it's because she gave him a portrait of his mother? After which the young lady says that then they can go together and ask him to come down. The girl also thinks that everything has been resolved well, and if things continue like this, she can peacefully fall into eternal sleep. Well, then someone turns to His Highness. Then the girl sees a priest behind her. He says he hopes the girl will briefly visit his laboratory and that he will also check on the princess's special condition. But the young lady replies that no, and she will be busy all this time, and now she has business with Philip. The young lady also understands that it is surprising how she refused Togo without noticing, and that he simply wanted to check his health. The young man at this time claims that the fact that magic does not work on Her Highness is a problem that can be easily solved. But the girl only claims that the children might be worried, so he shouldn't talk about it, and there's nothing special about it. After which the priest says that okay, and if Princess Togo wishes it, then so be it. Well, after this, the main character only gets embarrassed and realizes that after the guy touched her forehead, she began to realize that it was because Isaac had protected Eudice and Naya from the artist, and she was simply worried because she felt indebted to him. But the young man at this time only approaches the young lady again, and the prince then asks why the priest has such a face. The main character then asks what suddenly happened, and the prince then falls, and since he was holding the young lady's hand, all three of them fall. The main character then whispers what kind of unworthy appearance this is, and the boy apologizes and also claims that he lost his balance. But Nayus screams that he cannot get up because he got tangled in the grass. The young woman also thinks Isaac is looking right at her and she's so embarrassed. But the guy insists that's what happens when she avoids him. The young lady then asks him what he's talking about. But the young man simply turns away and insists that, no matter how uncomfortable it is for her to conduct the examination, he is still a priest, and for the well-being of Her Highness, he will try again and again, so let her not avoid him. After which the young man still looks away and asks her. And Ophelia insists that she wasn't trying to avoid him and that it just happened that way. At this time, the prince understands that there are people who can speak so directly to the princess, and will he really not even lose his head for this? But he, too, must become the same kind of person as he is. The young man also wonders if Her Highness has caught a cold, since her hand is so hot. Meanwhile, the magician is torturing one of the bandits, who cries out that he'll tell him everything he knows about the artist, so he begs for mercy. Kristen asks if the goal is really to get the ring, and the main character at this time thinks about the first disciple of the high priest, and wonders if he really always had such delicate eyelashes, and rosy cheeks and soft skin that exudes a pleasant scent. The young man turns to the princess. He also wonders what she's looking at like that, but the girl thinks that it's a shame because she can't take your eyes off him. The girl also claims she came because the painkiller's study report was delayed. She also understands that she needs to stay away from the priest for a while, so she turns around and states that if she is not ready yet, then she is going. Well, the guy then asks if she is already leaving and also claims that if she needs a report, then there it is. But at the same moment, he turns over a couple of bugs, after which something explodes there. The main character is then shocked and wonders what kind of smoke it is because it hurts her eyes, after which she asks if Isaac is okay. But Isaac just jumps out of the smoke and then grabs the young lady and throws her to the floor. The young man claims that this is a harmful gas formed when mixing medications, so it doesn't last long. She needs to wait in this position. Then the heroine realizes he has a firm hand, and among the sharp smell of gas, she feels Isaac's scent, but the girl still understands that she needs to calm down, so she will go somewhere else so as not to feel strange, and her heart does not pound where there will be no priest. After which the young lady claims that everything is fine and she needs to go and then runs out of the tower. And the guy, watching her, thinks why he has been in such a state lately and he can't even sleep properly. And he also makes mistakes out of the blue, after which the young man only sighs and realizes that he needs to go to church. The guy also thinks that he needs to pull himself together and focus on making sure that the drugs don't mix anymore. Meanwhile, the main character runs away, embarrassed. A short time later, she arrives at the temple, and the priestess smiles and says that even at the same time, two people who are difficult to see paid a visit. When the young man sees the princess, he is a little surprised, after which he turns around, puzzled, and is about to leave. But the priest just grabs him by the clothes and then screams that Her Highness has arrived and where is this boy going to go, and also whether he has completely forgotten the rules of etiquette. Well, the main character then says no, and let the high priest leave him alone, since she came there to have a cup of tea. She also understands that she would be grateful if Isaac left. A little while later, the girl is already sitting with a cup of tea and claims that there is no one who could prepare the temple's specialty as the high priest, and this is a secret, but to be honest, Isaac's tea turns out too hot, and the man claims that the young lady seems calmer, and he is glad about it. He also asks how their fearless daredevil behaves and whether he causes any problems, to which the girl smiles and asks what the priest says about Isaac, because he helps them a lot. The young lady also understands that if it weren't for him, Yudis would have gone through even greater difficulties, and it seems he is steadily working to advance research in the field of pain relief, and it's good that he is by her side. Although the girl also thinks it would be nice if her heart didn't beat so much at the sight of him, and why does she have such a strange feeling inside? The priest, meanwhile, insists that he was actually worried when sending him to the palace, as he is a very immature child. After which he asks what if he puts poison in food or sets something on fire, and this makes an old man like him think. The main character then thinks about what he is talking about, and turns to the high priest and also claims that he is exaggerating too much, but the man says that he himself would be glad to know that this is an exaggeration. After all, in the past, this guy was very overly gloomy, but recently, thanks to her, he has become calmer, and before he had an explosive character. However, he thinks Her Highness should know. The girl wonders if she'll be told about Isaac's past. After all, in her past lives, she never asked, and he never told her anything, so it was a secret no one knew. At this time, the girl also hears some noise and asks what it is, but the priest remains silent for a while. And he understands that when he was about to tell about Isaac's past, who dared to interfere with it. At this point, the man making the noise shouts for the high priest to come out. But then the servants tell the count to stop, as this is a temple. The man realizes that this ignoramus is Count Rule. Toot just hits one of the servants and screams that he made so many donations for the temple, and they treat him so rudely. The priest then says that the count has come again, and the priests will take care of him, after which he suggests going to a quieter place. At this time, the count cries out, "Is there really no priest? If so, then let them call his student." He also screams that this is true, and he conducted an investigation, and also that their Isaac is from commoners, and they are all worse than him, and the man also asks how they are not ashamed. The main character looks at all this and claims that it is very provocative for the priests and Isaac. The priest simply asks that Isaac not end up in that place. The girl understands that the breath is warmer than the wind, and the priest is more polite than anyone else. And the girl wonders if Isaac has received the mercy of the high priest and God's love. He always made such an aggressive face. The man, meanwhile, just poked him with a stick and screamed, "Is this really that low-class Isaac?" Well, the young man then just turns around, and the man screams that this is not possible and asks if he really can't handle this. The main character at this time only sighs and also understands that she thought that there would be big problems, but thank God everything went without incident. After this, the other servants turn to the high priest and tell him to somehow calm down Count Ruel. The man then says what scoundrels they are, and he has a guest, but the servants just start crying and screaming that they can't stand it anymore. After all, he comes every day and turns the temple upside down, and they also have things to do, and they can't keep an eye on the count all the time, and they also can't throw the great double out of the gates. The main character understands that it is impossible to even start a conversation there, let alone take a break, after which she wonders if the count has some kind of problem. And the guy replies that it is not that big, and the members of the Rule family got into trouble because of the change of seasons, and also any priest can go there and pour holy power on that place. But the man is stubborn and says that he needs to receive treatment from the high priest. After which, he also cries out that the coniferous temple is not working like that, and the young woman thinks that she understands. And of course, the high priest only treats members of the royal family, and this is simply a custom, so this is not a sufficient reason for refusal. Depending on their status, priests can treat different conditions. This girl understands that if the high priest personally performs the treatment, it will be recorded in the Book of Conspirators, so it's best to refrain from doing so. The servant shouts out that he's been trading hundreds of uraniums, and is now even pleased with Isaac. He's asking the high priest to do something, after all. The man claims it's because Isaac was summoned to the palace. The young lady at this time only thinks about this guy and his current state, and the high priest claims that this is because Isaac has a very, very dark past. The young lady then says they're in the same turmoil as the palace, and then she'll go. The man then asks if the girl is already leaving. But she hasn't yet heard about Isaac's very, very dark past. But the girl replies that the high priest should not talk about others behind their backs, One of the servants of the people cries out, "Does she really dare to treat the high priest like this?" However, the other one claims that this girl was a beautiful lady like light, and she just said palace. The young man also understands that this is thin, beautiful hair, a delicate aroma, and also the nobility acquired from birth. After which, the servant wonders if this girl is really the princess of the empire. As the young lady is heading toward her colleague, someone opens the door for her. And he bows and also states that it is an honor for him to meet her in such a place, and nothing can hide the fact that she is a princess. After this, the main character just turns around, gets into the carriage, and drives away. A little while later, she is already standing on top of one of the towers, and also thinks that the Great One has had enough of all these cretins, and it is disgusting because this count is no better than Duke Sarkart. At the place where they met by chance, he gathered all the priests to say goodbye, and this pressure was to obtain permission for treatment from the high priest or from his successor Isaac. The girl then understands that eating sweets relieves stress and that this is enough as food, but then someone claims that this is not enough. And why is the young lady a little surprised? After which she finally sees a guy, and he tells her to take care of her health and eat according to the recommended daily intake. The main character then looks at the food he is eating and realizes that it seems the guy has exceeded his norm. At this time, the guy says that he ate and his soul immediately felt better, after which he tells the princess to move away from there a little. The main character then looks at the young man and asks what he is going to do, but he only asserts that since he has already eaten, he needs to move. After which the young lady sees this guy flying towards her and screams, "Has he really gone crazy?" The young man then stands on another tower and, slightly losing his balance, approaches the young lady. After which he presses her against the wall and claims that it is more dangerous than he thought. At this time, the main character screams out what a fool he is and let him repeat this to me again, and he needs to be executed. The young man only smiles after this and says that, nevertheless, his jump was cool, right up to the point that Her Highness forgot about all her worries for a moment. The main character is only embarrassed by this, and also thinks that the guy shouldn't do this because of her. At the time when he himself was in a bad mood, and at that moment the girl realized that in fact everything was vague and maybe somewhere in her soul. But when she sees this guy, her heart beats wildly, and she is overwhelmed with excitement. And the girl wonders if it is because she respects his desire to help others, and the goodwill that she had to lose. At this time, the guy claims that his father was a doctor, and he treated exactly the same nobles as Count Ruel. Well, instead, they reported him to the temple and executed him, and it looks like this bothered her after visiting the temple. The guy also claims he feels better after pouring out his soul, and for some reason wants to tell Her Highness everything. The main character then thinks about the kindness that only he possesses, and the guy loves this world and shouldn't belong to the palace. The young lady also understands that in all his past lives he wanted to leave the palace and go somewhere far away, and the guy claims that he is now ready to listen to her and whether she will order him to treat the great nobleman Count Ruel. The young lady notes that even if he hates it, bottom treatment is treatment, and the young lady asks if this is true, but she still claims that he can forget about Count Ruel, and also understands that even if his face is distorted by all the cruelty of this world, she hopes that he at least will not lose this kindness, and the young lady wonders if he would like to heal more people together than he can even imagine. The young man asks what she means by this, and the girl points to one of the old city districts and claims that a fire in the past left a vacant lot there, and she can build a huge building there for treating the sick and let the guy lay the foundation. The young man is a little surprised after this and asks if there really will be a large treatment center on the vacant lot of an old neighborhood. The young woman insists that she did say she would do something about it. She also understands that it will then be necessary to adjust the system and train competent doctors, as well as increase access for commoners, and she will try to ensure that the treatment of diseases does not become the exclusive property of the nobility. After which the young lady claims that first it is necessary to explore the area and allocate a budget, as well as choose a reliable person, and the guy is interested in when the lady began to think about this. The main character wonders if he really thinks that she thought about this for 1 or 2 days, and of course she thought about it from the very beginning, so naturally it would be absurd to act on a large scale right away. And she wants a small, experimental clinic to be opened near the old district. At this time, the young man asks whether in this case he will have to leave the imperial palace. And the girl replies that this is even for the better, because where he will often see patients, the process of creating anesthesia will be accelerated. After which the guy turns to Her Highness and asks if she really doesn't mind, since he will be leaving the palace, if everything goes as she planned, but the young lady replies that nothing can be done about it, because she did not hope for this from the very beginning. The girl understands that, as a person who has become a princess, she must eventually resign herself and do what is required of her, and they also need to cooperate. The guy realizes there's trouble ahead, and a little while later someone cries out that the girl wants to build on the old city vacant lot. The plan was to clear the area and build a banquet hall for the nobility. And even if she makes doctors legal, everything will not go as she planned. At this point, the girl gets up from her seat and asks how they dare raise their voices. After which the aristocrat tells Her Highness that she is, of course, a high-ranking official, but there is no law against conducting palace affairs in this manner, and if she forbids nobles from speaking out, the girl asks who said she forbids it. She also tells them to speak one at a time, because she'll try to convince them otherwise. The girl also understands that she'll use her logic to prevail. After which she still won, and a little while later she claims that if there is no one else to speak out. However, then someone claps their hands and claims that it is truly commendable that Her Highness cares so much about the lives of ordinary people, and they, her subjects, also hope that she will take care of them. The main character realizes that this is Count Rule, and he still hasn't given up on his request to send the high priest to his home, after which the young lady tells the count that it's good, and then she will give him a clear answer, after which she says that yes, the high priest will also be able to purify other people besides members of the imperial family. The man then wants to say something, but the young lady claims that only the commoner comes first. A little while later, the young lady sighs heavily and also realizes that today's government meeting is over. However, then someone knocks on her room and the main character asks who is there, to which she hears the answer that it is Count Ruel. The girl then wonders if he is still there after this, and when he opens the door, then she sees that the man is bowing to the floor and asking Her Highness to have mercy on him. The girl then wonders if he really decided to act this way, and also asks the count if it's not just a cold, and if he will give his consent. Then a priest will visit him with the appropriate holy powers, but the man replies that no, it is not a cold. And he also couldn't tell the truth, so he hid it. A little while later, in the place where there had once been a wasteland, someone cries out to Father Isaac that they need more clean cloth. Another asks where he should put the contaminated needles. Someone else cries out, "What a disaster! More and more people are arriving, and even if they exceed the intake limit, it's absurd to send them back." At this time, the young man only shouts for the seriously wounded to go there, and the distribution of patients is the most important thing, after which he also asks if the boiled water is ready. After which he also turns to the scribe and tells him to keep records of everything. One of the people then asks if he sees people as a priest. If so, then why is he dressed like a doctor? Another young man also claims that the princess legalized doctors, and then another asks if it's true and what happened to the villain of the century. Another then whispers that, who knows, maybe it's time for her to enter eternal sleep. After which Isaac angrily addresses them and claims that the patients are waiting for them, so they should shut their mouths and move their hands faster, after which the two apologize. And the guy just claims that they dare to joke while they are busy up to their necks. At this moment, someone runs up to the young man and cries out that something bad has happened. Isaac then asks, "How urgent is this patient?" And another one replies that this is not the issue and that priests have also arrived. The young man then looks at them, and one of these priests asks if the guy really works as a doctor in a poor area. after which he claims that Isaac is a great man, and maybe he should learn from him. At this time, one of the people asks what is going on and that the priests are so cruel, and the girl asks if they really came there to deal with the doctor, after which he cries out that, as he thought, the legalization of treatment for such doctors turned out to be a lie. At this time, one of them claims that treatment is necessary, and if everything is left as is, the body will begin to rot. But then another asks, didn't he know that the temple is responsible for healing, and that even the high priest, who is merciful to him, won't be able to help in any way this time? After which, one of the priests tells the guy nicely to let all these people go. After all, if sick people gather in such a dirty place, they'll get even sicker. But the young man just takes a bucket of dirty water. At that very moment, another priest hits him on the head, and one of the priests claims that he did say not to give him a word, after which Isaac is a little surprised. And another priest apologizes but asks if he really wanted to pour it out on them. He also claims that the story of how he set up a hospital in these slums reached the temple, and if he doesn't mind, they will help those people along with him. The guy then asks if they are really going to help this hospital, and the priest asks if it is really impossible. Another priest then claims that healing is the duty of priests, and that he is helping them. Another guy claims that at first they were also surprised, but then they thought that his actions were correct. And even if he doesn't accept them, they intend to lay a rug there and receive the sick separately. At this time, the guy only hears the child crying, after which he asserts that the more hands the better, and if they have made a decision, then let them get to work. After which one of the priests practically beams and tells the boy to provide it to them as well. The boy also wonders if Her Highness the Princess sees that the priests were only involved in treating nobles. They voluntarily left the temple. Now one of them claims he heard that the creation of this hospital was the princess's idea, and that there are many bad rumors circulating about it. Frankly, he eagerly awaits the moment when His Highness the Prince ascends the throne. At this time, Isaac understands that by the will of Her Highness, the world has become much better, and now he wonders if the first snow has already fallen. But he also realizes it's still a bit early. Someone turns to Isaac and asks if the bandages are ready. He realizes he might have imagined it. And she also understands that the world is slowly becoming more beautiful. And the main character recalls asking the Count why he still struggles with this deep pain. The man then replied that it was not a cold, and that he was seeing something like this for the first time in his life, because this disease was not from this world. The young lady also understands that although the Count's explanation was inaccurate, there are no similar symptoms in any historical literature, so the girl thinks whether she should personally go to the Count's residence. Well, the girl understands that she, again, has a bad feeling, because this is a serious illness, this is a special change that did not occur in previous regressions. Then the girl also closes her book, and thinks that no, and also that at that time it was simply beyond her interest, and the Count himself wanted to hide that something strange was happening. At this time, someone screams about the Heinrichi continent, and the young lady turns around and sees the prince there, along with the teacher. Meanwhile, the blonde insists that Nayu is leading in answers and all the desserts are his, while Youth only has faces. After this, the young lady realizes that Surasad is indeed suited to teaching lessons of this format. The girl also wonders if this particular apology is odd and if Kristen asked for a vacation after the incident with the artist. And since he is a famous magician who said that he wants to study magic in the near future, but even if so, he is not visible at all. The guy said that he was going to do a little research in the magic tower and he was a capable person, so he should be fine. And even when she told him to leave, he did not pretend to listen to her, but still did not understand what happened this time and whether he really left so easily after receiving a passionate magical stimulus. At this time, someone addresses Her Highness and the girl turns around, after which she understands. What is this? The young man then tells Her Highness that she is surprised and seems disappointed, but the girl simply tells the guy not to try to read her soul, because that's not his style, and at least let him give her some time. The guy then asks what "at least" he means, after which he claims that if she needs him, she interrupts and says they'll go to Count Ruel's residence. And that's not the shortest distance from the castle to the residence. After all, they will try to use the bridge to get there, and the guy then asks if she is really going to go around. But he also understands that this bridge leads to a vacant lot in the old city, designated for a medical complex. A little while later, the young lady is already in the carriage and claims that in any case they will send professionals for precise measurements. But there are still things that you won't know if you don't see them in person. Now then claims that the lady will soon be able to check out the free area and asks if they should stop for a while, to which the girl replies no, and that he should just drive past slowly. After which the young man says that he understood her, and if she changes her decision, then let her speak, and her Naledi understands that she feels devastated without Isaac and Kristen, and does not even know where they are now, and whether Kristen has returned from the magic tower. Well, now the young lady looks at the flowers and realizes that she thought she was imagining things, but since there are no people there, wildflowers are growing. The young lady also thinks that it is good that she came to see them, and that they will have to be disposed of as soon as construction work begins, and it would also be better to transplant them to a slightly different place. At least one stem and at least one flower would be better off avoiding being mercilessly trampled. Well, then the young lady also sees someone in that place and thinks their silhouette is a little familiar. The girl also wonders if it could be Kristen. A little while later, they arrive at the Count's residence, after which they get out of the carriage and the guys claim that he wants to ask Her Highness something and is interested in why she personally came to this place. Rumors spread faster than the wind, and everyone already knows there's a serious illness in the county. The main character then realizes that this guy doesn't know she's immune to magic, and she wonders what the connection is between immunity to magic and the illness. After which she also ponders whether she should tell this idiot, after which the young lady only claims that it is because such a higher being as she does not get sick. The guy then asks if she is serious or joking, and at that time the Count meets them and says that she has arrived. The young lady then realizes that he looks gloomier than usual and that he is like a different person. After which, the girl convinces the Count that she heard that the symptoms appeared after sunset and came to check on his condition. The man then asks if Her Highness is alone, as he feels she can't do anything without the high priest. He also turns around and says that if she is so stubborn, then does he have the strength to object to her? And yet he should give her one piece of advice, and it would be better if she left her servant there. The guy then says that this man is strange, why would he suddenly leave Her Highness alone? But the main character says no, and they will do as the Count said. Now then asks why, and the girl understands that she will eventually have to explain it to him, after which she states that she will briefly tell him that the guy should not dare to visit her. The girl understands that she has dug through all the books but has not found a single case similar to the county's illness, but she thinks that if it is not an illness but magic, then this incident can be explained. Considering the fact that high-level mat has appeared in the capital and what is called a disease in the county, it may have symptoms of the disease, but what if magic is involved, and therefore she is not susceptible to magic? She should enter the county alone. Well, if you say it all in one expression, the girl claims that the guy has Naya, and if he doesn't want to leave the boy alone, he should take care of his health. But the young man only cries out that it seems she's completely forgotten, even though he's turned into such a pitiful, fragile form. But he is still a person who carried out the affairs of the Assassin's Guild, and the safety of Her Highness is his responsibility. However, at that very moment, some strange creature crawls out from the underground in front of the Count. The young man then, also in shock, asks what it is because something strange has come out, and the Count just tells the guy to listen to what Her Highness is telling him, because this disease is dangerous and you can't get close to it, otherwise you'll get infected. The main character then thinks about what a strange smell there is, and she has heard about it, but she doesn't want to see it in real life. After which, she also asks the boy if he understands and lets him think about Nayu. Then the young lady heads to the palace. Well, then the guy hears someone talking to him and asking what he is doing and calling him a coward. And he tells the young man to go into the mansion and join them, but at that very moment, the guy throws off this nastiness. At this time, the main character is walking through the mansion and looks up and sees people hanging in the air. At this time, the man tells the girl not to look up because they are also members of their family, but the main character thinks that he could have said it earlier. He also claims that when the sun rises, they become normal, and memories of the previous night begin to become foggy, but the young lady wonders if such a phenomenon has become commonplace. The man claims that even if she becomes the same as them, she will not understand this. At that very moment, this monster comes towards them, after which the man immediately fights it off with a stick. He also claims that he needs to go a little further, but the young lady asks if the Count ever suspected that this could be magic or a curse, to which the man replies, "Why not?" He reluctantly called a magician to investigate, but he too was helpless and left, saying that it might be a priest's province since so many people were experiencing such a phenomenon. The ultimate conclusion might be that it was a terrible disease. He also points to one of the rooms, and the young lady understands what it means. But at that very moment, someone interrupts the young lady, and he says what a nightmare it is. It turns out to be the head priest, and he addresses Her Highness, claiming that upon hearing the news, he immediately ran there and then offered to go with her. The Count then sees the high priest and immediately bows to Her Highness and also thanks her for calling the high priest, and now he feels that everything will be all right. But the main character says that they shouldn't rush to conclusions because the situation is grave, and only she and the high priest will enter this room, because it will be problematic if the Count's illness worsens. The man then claims that he will wait for them downstairs and also asks them to take care of themselves. At this time, the girl only turns to him and calls him Philip, but the guy then only turns around. And the young lady grabs him by the clothes and asks if she didn't tell him to wait outside, but the man asks what she's even talking about and why pinch an old man like him. But the main character then wonders what kind of antics these are, and that he changed his appearance to the high priest thanks to the ring she gave him. Well, then the young lady suddenly believes that there is no ring on his hand and asks if he really is the high priest. After which the girl says that it can't be and what method he used. But at this point, the man only tells Her Highness not to turn around. The main character then thinks about what he is talking about, and the man says that under no circumstances should she move. And so quietly, and also let him not let go of her hand, after which the young lady thinks, why, and is there really something there? But if you don't say what's there, then it's even scarier. The man at this time is just fighting off all these monsters, and at the right moment grabs the young lady and screams that they should run away from there. It turns out to be now, after all, and the young lady realizes that everything is as she thought, after which they finally stop. And the guy claims that they ran there, and it probably won't follow them, but he still asks what happened. After all, even in the guild, such situations had never happened. And then the main character screams in shock, asking if she hadn't told him to wait outside. She also tries to shake the guy by the collar, but still screams that it is impossible to even move him, but the young man apologizes, but the girl claims that in fact he does not regret anything. The guy then claims that he held the ring in his teeth and was afraid that if he put it on his finger, he would immediately be kicked out of there, and it seems that he works in any case if he is near the owner. He also tested it, and even the clothes could be changed. The young man asks if it's possible for an artifact of such a high level to exist. He then asks where the lady found it, and the girl replies that it's a princess prop. She also knocks on the door and asks if it's locked. But then the main character wonders what this feeling of apprehension is, and why, in such a situation, only the Count remained sane and asked for help from outside. Because the mansion seemed to be trying to invite someone. At this time, the guy claims that the door is locked, so he will have to stay there, and the young lady claims that he needs to somehow get out of there, and he is the one who can do it, so let the guy find the carriage outside. But the young man then wonders what Her Highness is talking about, and that they are not allowed to go outside the mansion and must stay inside. The main character then says that she knows, and he says that they should stay in the quarantine zone because of the risk of infection, but in the case of the Count, he was in contact with many people, and nothing happened, so they need to get out of there as quickly as possible. However, after this, the guy only claims that he did say they needed to stay there. The young lady then asks what he's talking about, and the guy just asks if she really thinks that this is for him and why she makes people repeat it, after which the young lady realizes that this is Nao's appearance. She screams for him to let her go, and come to his senses. The girl also realizes that he's becoming like the people in the mansion, after which the young man suggests they return and go to the mansion right now. Well, the main character claims that there is no need to do this, after which she asks him to come to his senses. Well, then the girl also feels someone's magic and wonders if it is that warm light. And she had already felt this somewhere, after which the girl wondered if it was really Kristen. But she also understands that he is not an enemy, and this is the man she saw in the old city wasteland. Then the girl realizes that her consciousness is beginning to fade, and at this time the guy is whispering something in her ear. After which he kisses her forehead and carries her away, grabbing Now with him. A short time later, the young lady is already getting out of bed. She also understands that this is her room, and at that moment someone turns to Her Highness and asks if she is awake. The main character wonders if this is Emmy's voice, and wonders if she has regressed again and fallen into an eternal sleep there. The maid then asks if Her Highness is okay, and now only wonders if she fell herself. The young lady then realizes it's that guy, and if it's Philip, she hasn't regressed, nor did she think she'd be pleased by his brash voice. The young lady also asks how much he remembers from yesterday, and the guy replies, up until the moment he ran down the hallway with her, and he vaguely remembers talking to her about the ring. But since then, everything is like a fog, and he woke up next to the gate, after which the young lady realizes that the strange figure was not Now. The young man asks if he was being rude. Ophelia replies that she will not blame him, so everything is fine, after which the young man thinks, is she going to blame him? But if so, then it means he definitely did something indecent. The girl also says that the high priest needs to be summoned at the count's request, and the boy asks if she will fulfill this request, as the count has shown great disrespect to Her Highness. The girl replies that the administrator should be especially careful in dealing emotionally with opponents. And besides, she saw the dangerous situation in the mansion with her own eyes, so there is no reason to think about it, and, if possible, she thinks that it would be nice to call the current master of the magic tower, but she also remembers that he disappeared, and then the next master of the magic tower. That is, Sir Kristen? At this moment, someone runs up to the young lady and speaks to Her Highness, that she should be in good health, but the prince only cries out to Nayu that Her Highness is still tired. At this time, the main character asks what is wrong with them and whether they really heard something, and the boy claims that they say that yesterday the lady returned unconscious. The blonde also follows the two and apologizes, also claiming that he was entrusted to conduct classes instead of Kristen today. Meanwhile, the prince asserts that he heard the girl take only Philip with her to the dangerous place, and that she should promise to take better care of herself. Meanwhile, the main character tells the children that they were just talking about important things. Nayu only tells the princess that she should not fall into eternal sleep, but the prince then screams in shock, saying what the guy is talking about, because she can't just do that. The main character is a little surprised after this and says they are true. But then she falls silent, and she only smiles, puzzled. The girl then also realizes that these are sincere cries of apology in her ears. After which she also remembers how the guy claimed that he swears with everything he has that he will not forgive Ophelia. The young lady then loses consciousness again and thinks about what she can say to this. A little while later, the girl is already sitting with a thermometer in her mouth and also claims that she said that nothing special happened. However, the maid asks if the mistress is really saying this after 3 days of lying in bed. The young lady replies that since she's rested, everything should be fine by now. But the maid only claims that the prince was very scared, and he circled around her so much that he almost created a moat. The girl then claims that she caused everyone unnecessary concern about the maid, and claims that work is prohibited today. The young lady then turns to Emmy, but insists that another day off won't cause the county to collapse. And in that case, she'll go make the lady some hot herbal tea. And then the main character thinks that there is a way to escape from there, after which she puts on her hat for a walk. And she claims that she will return soon and also leaves a note that her destination is the county of Erhard. A little while later, the girl is already approaching the county, and someone turns to her and claims that this outfit has completely disguised her. The main character understands that it is Sursad and also claims that he is wearing a very simple outfit. The young man replies that he is used to dressing like this and is pleased to see Her Highness in a good mood. But before Kristen was recognized as the next owner of the Magic Tower and received the title of Count, the family was only the owner of a small land on the outskirts. That is why he is used to working with the land, even though he is the eldest son in the family. But the Erhards owe a lot to Kristen. The main character then says, what about him? Is it true that his younger brother went to the Magic Tower? The young man then asks the lady what she's talking about, and he told him that he was carrying out Her Highness's secret orders, and isn't that so? The main character only gets angry after that. And the guy asks if there are any problems, to which the young lady replies that the problem is that she found out about the Lord's lies towards her, and he told her that he would go to the Magic Tower for research, and she also had a strong suspicion that everything she had gone through in recent days was somehow connected to him. After which, the girl also thanks the young man for the fact that she at least now finds out about this. He claims that he will take her to the palace, to which she replies that it is not necessary, after which, the guy. He continues to work on the ground, but after a while someone approaches him, and he asks if it was really Her Highness, to which the guy only claims that she left. And his brother says that it's good because he didn't expect her to come there so quickly, and also thanks Assad for not telling about his presence there. The blonde-haired boy claims he doesn't know what his brother is doing there, but he's genuinely worried. Kristen says there's no need for that, and it has nothing to do with him. However, after this, the guy only removes his brother and says that he knows that he cannot stop him. So he won't even try, but he'll say only one thing, no matter what happens. Knights with the Erhard family crest. They will choose not him, but Her Highness, since they are knights of the Empire. The young man then smiled. He claims that this is what he wanted, but his brother immediately attacks him again. Well then, Kristen says someone is coming, after which the girl opens the gate and asks if the guy can convey her words to Lord Kristen. The young man then says that, of course, and asks what words he will pass on as soon as he sees this guy. The main character then says that she will definitely achieve what she wants, so what if he has something to hide from her? Then let him try to hide it well until the very end. Well, the young man replies that he will definitely pass it on. Meanwhile, Kristen blows the young lady a kiss and thinks that she will follow her words. A little while later, the main character is already in the city and understands that before it gets noisy, she needs to quickly return back. Well then, someone in the palace screams out to the whole city that Her Highness has disappeared. But what if she damages even one of her nails? The main character realizes at this point that she seems to be seeing Emmy fussing, after which she turns to the carriage driver and tells him to wait. She then states that they will go to the county of Rouen. A short time later, the princess finally arrived at Rule's residence. She then claims to have received a telegram en route, so the high priest will arrive soon, and during the day, everything there is so peaceful. At this moment, someone addresses Her Highness the Princess, and the girl thinks that he arrived quickly and claims that the high priest has arrived. But when the girl sees who it is, she is a little surprised and says that it is Isaac. The young lady then wonders if he came instead of the high priest and asks what is going on with the hospital. And the guy replies that thanks to Her Highness, the hospital has more workers. And what's more, it's an insult to say that to an old man whose knees are cracking loudly. Go there. The young lady then realizes that, in her opinion, the guy seems quite pissed, as if he's gnawing at guilt. At this time, someone else drives up in a carriage and the main character is a little surprised. And then the prince, the maid, and Nayu jump out of the carriage. Philip regretfully insists that, no matter what happens, these three wanted to follow Her Highness, and as she said, this area was sealed off. After which the young lady says that he is a good man, and if possible, this needs to be finished as quickly as possible. The young lady also claims that she will send Izvestia to get help from the magician, and Isaac just smiles, after which Philip realizes that this guy has a lot of pressure. But he's unlocked his holy power, and it's so immense that he can even feel it. Afterward, the boy wonders if Her Highness hasn't noticed. At this point, The guy approaches the young lady and claims he'll do everything he can. The main character then asks if this is true and also claims she's counting on him, realizing he seems confident.